Chapter 829 The Power of Locking Out Cultivation. The red orc punched into his fist while cracking his neck. He was ready to give Noah a beat down to death. Facing the big brute orc, Noah remained calm. He didn't even cast a spell. Instead, Noah waited for the red orc to arrive to him. "We are leaving." The golden-haired man tried to leave the hall, only to get halted by the silver-armored guardians. These soldiers surrounded everyone to interrogate them later. It would only take a second for Gaia to use the teleportation scroll to escape. However, he couldn't leave the place without finding the real weapon. Kidnapping the two dwarves seemed to be the only option at that moment. Except, the dwarves were already under the control of the silver-armored guardians. Gaia dared not to reveal her identity when Noah was right there in the room with her. Gaia waited for the right moment to strike. Meanwhile, the red orc almost reached Noah. When they had just a meter distance between them, the orc dashed at Noah with his fist aimed at Noah's head. Noah just moved his body to the side without moving his feet. The orc's fist brushed past his face, barely missing his nose by an inch. Then, Noah grabbed the orc's wrist, placed his hand on the orc's chest and boom, a bright beam of light shot out from Noah's palm, sending the orc flying yet again. This time, the orc crashed onto the wall, creating an orc-sized hole in it. Fumes radiated from the orc's chest as Noah's palm got imprinted on his chest. After the orc hit the wall, the entire hall trembled. "Stay down," Noah's voice swept across the hall. The red orc did the exact opposite of what just Noah said and got back to his feet. He clubbed his own chest like a pissed-off gorilla before running toward Noah with his eyes burning in rage and violence. Keeping his focus on the orc, Noah kicked a piece of stone crumb down from the ceiling toward the orc. It was heavy as hell, and if a commoner tried to kick it, every bone in their feet would just snap like a twig. But when Noah kicked it, the stone piece flew like a football and hit the orc right in the head before the orc could defend himself. The orc was stunned for a few moments. Utilizing this opportunity, Noah dashed at the orc, leaped into the air, and kicked the orc with his knees. "Arg!" the orc growled, stumbling backward. Noah hovered in the air and fired a strong beam of light that knocked down the orc to the ground. On the ground, the red orc struggled and growled in pain. Then, Noah landed straight down on the orc's chest, breaking a couple of the orc's ribs in the process. Although Noah and the orc were at the fusion stage, Noah was far stronger than the orc. He was a god after all. Compared to Michael, Noah had a different path to godhood and possessed different powers. Still, as a god of light, the light beam coming through the hole above them strengthened Noah. Plus, Noah spent a nice chunk of his time honing his battle prowess. Noah stomped the orc with his knee, making the orc cough out blood. He punched the orc repeatedly until the orc's body radiated a glow from within. Suddenly, an explosion went off around the orc. The hall trembled once again as Gaia grabbed the pillar beside her to steady herself. Then, she noticed Noah crashing onto the rubble nearby. The red orc jumped back to his feet. To her surprise, the orc was on fire. He was literally on fire. However, the fire did not hurt the orc. Rather, the crimson red draped on the orc's skin like another set of armor. Before Noah could get back to his feet, the orc readied his hand, sending a stream of scorching hot flames. The curtains around them immediately caught on fire. Soon, the fire spread like wildfire, engulfing everything around them. On the other hand, a wall of ice appeared in front of Noah and protected him from the orc's fire. Ice and fire collided, creating a misty vapor around them. Coupled with the smoke, the mist made it impossible to see a thing in the room. Luckily, it worked in Gaia's favor. She closed her eyes, spreading her senses around. There they are. Gaia located the two dwarves. She sneaked toward the dwarves while Noah was occupied with the orc. "You want the dwarves?" Gaia's heart skipped a beat when she heard the orc's gruffy voice. She thought the orc was talking to her. But luckily, these words were meant for Noah. She hastened her steps, only to see another orc stumbling toward the two dwarves under the silver-armored soldier's hold. For some reason, her instincts screamed at her. Her legs moved without her control and leaped backward, putting some distance between herself and the dwarves. When she leaped away, she heard another explosion. Something splashed onto her face as she touched the drop of liquid trickling down her cheek. Blood. Gaia saw drops of blood on her hand. "Ah!" Gaia heard another scream that sounded as loud as a banshee's cry. It sounded like the human woman accompanied the golden-haired man. The orc who approached the dwarves, the explosion and the scream followed by it made Gaia question what just had happened. They are gone. The orc laughed like a devil. As soon as Noah heard the words, the wall of ice before him shattered. The icy shards flew in every direction, impaling wherever they came into contact. Then, a powerful gust of wind shot out of Noah, clearing the mist around them as well as swaying the flame until Noah reached the orc. Killing intent skyrocketed from Noah, seeing the bits of pieces of the dwarves and the silver-armored soldiers. Even the well-forged armor was broken into pieces by the orc, who self-exploded, killing the two dwarves. Noah knew the orcs were dangerous but never anticipated them to self-explode. Both Noah and Gaia were speechless. But for now, Noah had to put an end to the red orc before more and more people died. Since the dwarves exploded along with the orc, Gaia had to change her plans. The two dwarves were the only ones who could have led her to the real weapon. So she turned her focus to the weapon itself. If she could transport it to the dark ocean somehow, she could ask Michael's help in tracking down or building a new one altogether. But stealing the weapons under the Guardian warship and Noah was not a small feat. One by one, the orcs who got knocked out by Noah stood up. Their eyes glimmered with the same emerald-green glow she saw in the red orc's body. One of the orcs rushed to the weapon. After the explosion went near it, the weapon was covered in blood and looked a bit dented. The orc turned the weapon, focusing its mouth on Noah. He was ready to use the weapon to kill Noah. The plan was indeed a good one. Unfortunately, Noah couldn't be killed with typical mortal weapons, according to Michael. The red orc quickly tried to cast a spell and dash out of the weapon's range. Yet he failed as a white sword came out of nowhere and impaled him through his chest. Arg! The orc groaned. After the sword stabbed him, the fire around the orc vanished into thin air. A sudden explosion of energy sent everything and everyone flying. Even Gaia collided against the wall and felt weak just for a brief moment. Even though she had enough strength to get back to her feet, she chose to lie on the ground as everyone else had been groaning and rolling on the ground. They looked worse. Calubra, who was behind a broken table, looked pale, groaning in pain and trying to get back to her feet. At that moment, when Gaia thought Noah was about to finish the red orc, he did something unimaginable. Noah raised his hand and fired a bright beam of light at the weapon itself. Boom! Gaia almost shouted as the weapon exploded into bits and pieces. The orc who stood behind crashed onto the wall behind him and hit the ground unconscious. "What did you do?" the red orc gasped. He couldn't believe Noah had just destroyed the weapon. Everyone, including Gaia, thought Noah was here to bring the weapon to the guild along with the dwarves. They were proven wrong by Noah. The red orc's eyes widened in complete shock. He wanted to kill Noah more than anything. One could see the rage and killing lust in his eyes. "Grh!" the orc growled when Noah twisted the sword's hilt in the orc's chest. "You are coming with me, Saravar," said Noah. The orc struggled to raise his hands as Gaia noticed a strange glow on the center of Noah's forehead. Soon, he cupped the orc's head as a beam of light shot out of Noah's forehead and penetrated the orc's head. This scene reminded Gaia of the time they were in the fire realm. Then, Noah used something similar to lock someone's cultivation. She was lucky enough to see that again. Saravar's fusion stage cultivation slowly declined to the point, in a few moments, he became a commoner. He was not even an arch-sensing stage cultivation at that moment. Instead, he was like someone in the southern continent, void of any arch-energy in his body. The threat Noah posed for them was the realm. Just like Michael had the power to snuff out someone's soul and absorb it, Noah possessed the power to lock someone's cultivation completely. Gaia's neck hair stood up, seeing the orc mumble like a crazy person. Every fiber in her body told her to get out of the place immediately. After all, she had no reason to stick around. The dwarves were dead, and the prototype was in bits and pieces. So if she wasted any more time in the same room with Noah, the Supreme Guardian, she would be in deep trouble. The last thing Gaia wanted for Michael was to devise a plan to infiltrate the Guardians and rescue her. Without a second thought, Gaia took out the teleportation scroll and used it. Noah suddenly turned his gaze toward the place where Gaia was and sensed the space being distorted. Yet the person who used the teleportation scroll was no longer there. Who was that? Noah heard Andreas' voice in his head. "We will know soon enough," said Noah. Chapter 830 The Mind Behind Death Kiss Crossbows. A few days before the auction at Embercrest Entertainment District. In a dimly lit cozy room, Noah sat behind a table, almost buried in scrolls and parchments. Most of them thought being a Supreme Guardian was just hanging around and barking orders. However, the real deal was way different. Noah spent most of his time rummaging through ancient texts, parchments, and scrolls to find out more about the gods and the god-killing weapons. After scouring the entire Azer continent, Noah found some texts indicating a great war between the gods. Some of the gods who led the war against what they called corrupted ones forged weapons capable of killing corrupted ones as well as themselves. Somehow, Lady Qianzhou got hold of the texts on how to forge these weapons and forged 7 arrows with her friend's help to kill the Dark Lord. The only problem was she forged replicas of these arrows and scattered them throughout the world to confuse the Dark Lord. Noah found 6 of these replicas, and he only had 1 real arrow. He was neck-deep in searching for these arrows until his mother Diana ordered him to return home and attend Catherine's baby shower. If that wasn't enough, Noah received disturbing reports that Han Torum dwarves had built a weapon capable enough to cause mass destruction. So now, Noah had to attend the baby shower, search for the arrows and deal with the dwarves. Noah! The door slowly creaked open, revealing Alicia's perfect slender figure. She gracefully strolled into the room with an alluring smile. What is it? Noah raised his head and was stunned by the beauty of his wife. She looked angelic in the cable light, making his heartbeat rise. As much as Noah liked to focus on the ancient texts, his wife looked too beautiful for him to ignore. He stood up from his chair and stepped closer to her. Is it me or you look gorgeous today? Asked Noah as he slowly wrapped his arm around Alicia's slender waist. I think you're being extra cheesy right now, Alicia chuckled but didn't wiggle herself out of his hold. Instead, she moved closer. They could feel each other's warm breath. Their noses brushed together as Alicia's cheeks slowly turned rosy red. Hammond is waiting for you downstairs. You should meet him, said Alicia. Did you have any problem rescuing him? Asked Noah. Ever since Alicia had a close encounter with Ghost, Noah had been keeping an eye on Alicia. She was one of the lucky ones who messed with the Dark Lord and lived to tell tales. Unfortunately, the same couldn't be said for Peter. What happened to Peter was indeed tragic, and Alicia was partially blamed for his death. Even some of the Belafort family members blamed Alicia for Peter's death and didn't dare to speak against Ghost, who actually killed him. It was easy for them to hate Alicia than speak a word against the Dark Lord. Like it or not, Alicia made an enemy out of Ghost, and Noah would do anything to keep her safe from him. That was the reason why Noah avoided sending Alicia to dangerous missions. No. But if I didn't know you better, I would say you are trying to keep me away from him. You know his people are everywhere, said Alicia. That's because corrupting and buying people is easier than we think. I cannot do this without you, Alicia. You won't lose me, Noah. I am not going to go behind your back and try to track down the Dark Lord anymore. But remember your promise. You have to avenge my brother. When the time comes, you need to put those arrows in him and end this play once and for all, said Alicia. Noah shared everything with Alicia except the fact there were replicas of the arrows, which held no power. I will stop him one way or another. Noah still had second thoughts about killing the Dark Lord. Something deep down blocked Noah from wanting to kill Ghost despite everything he had done. But Noah knew one day, when he and Ghost meet on a battlefield, one of their deaths would be inevitable. I will hold you to your words. Now go. Alicia gave Noah a peck on the cheek before wiggling out of his hold. Then, Noah walked out of the room, climbing down the stairs to meet Hammond. After climbing down the redwood stairs, Noah came before a door flanked by silver-armored guardians. Supreme Guardian. The soldiers bowed toward Noah as they opened the door for him. Inside the room, a scrawny young man wearing round glasses was walking back and forth. Anyone could tell the young man was nervous judging by how much he sweated and trembled. The young man was tall, thin, and had curly messy brown hair. He had an aura of intelligence and genius around him. If the Han Torum dwarves knew the young man was here in the Winston Manor, they would storm the place without a second thought. This young man was their goose that lays golden eggs. Granted, the dwarves were talented blacksmiths and builders, but none of them came close to Hammond. The dwarves hated Hammond's intelligence and the fact he was a human. Every weapon the dwarves built for the last 2 years was not theirs to begin with. They belonged to Hammond. He designed them while the dwarves just built them according to Hammond's specifics. You must be Noah Winston, Hammond said, trembling nervously. I am Hammond. Hammond Beltrow. You must know that. I am sorry. How could you not? You are the Supreme Guardian. You know everything. Hammond blabbered nonstop as Noah patted him on the shoulder with a smile to calm him down. Relax. Take a deep breath. You are safe here. Okay, Okay. I'll stop talking and start breathing.
Ooh-ha! Hammond started to inhale heavily and exhale as Noah led him to the wooden table. He made Hammond it on, and he sat on the other facing Hammond. I hope your journey here was pleasant, except for the part where we had to break down your place and knock out a few dwarves. Sorry about that. Well, I am thankful for your rescue. Those dwarves were crazy. I've been held hostage for 2 long years, Hammond stuttered. Noah felt bad for Hammond and wished he had learned about him sooner. I never wanted my inventions to be used as weapons. But all that the dwarves wanted was more weapons. Weapons that could destroy the elves and their precious empire. Hammond began to blabber once again as Noah flicked his wrist, retrieving a pale yellow pill from his space ring.
Here, take this.
It will calm your nerves and help you dash. Noah didn't even finish his sentence when Hammond snatched the pill and swallowed it like a hungry puppy. The pill melted down into Hammond's mouth and in a few seconds, his face regained the natural rosiness. He seemed more relaxed, loosened up, and stopped shaking. What can you tell me about this new weapon the dwarves have been bragging about? Noah asked Hammond. It is not a weapon. Hammond raised his voice. He genuinely seemed angry and upset that Noah thought his invention was a weapon. I am sorry. It is okay, Noah calmed him down. Tell me more about it so I can stop the dwarves before they auction your invention to the highest bidder. That cannot happen. You have to stop it. You must stop it. Noah was surprised that Hammond had started to sweat and tremble again, regardless of the pill he just took. It meant one thing. Hammond was so close to having either a heart attack or a panic attack. Therefore, Noah had to give him another pill to calm his nerves. Just like before, Hammond devoured the second pill in a blink of an eye. My inventions are not weapons. They are meant to help people who cannot use fancy-mancy magic stuff. Do you know how hard it is for us, those who cannot cultivate to higher stages, to get simple tasks done? Hammond questioned Noah. Gods played a cruel trick on Hammond's life by giving him over-the-top intelligence to build almost anything, and taking away his ability to cultivate. He was just at the arch-sensing stage 5, and there was no possibility for Hammond to level up. The only good thing that happened in Hammond's life was he ended up in the Empress' many orphanages throughout her empire. He grew up with elves and other orphan humans. It was in the orphanage where Hammond learned to build, design, and nurture his talents. Once he reached the age of 13, Hammond built simple devices for the Empress army and earned enough coins to travel the world as he had always dreamed of. At that time, no one fully realized Hammond's talents. I built everything to help people, not harm them, Hammond stuttered. I understand. A sword can be used to cut weeds and heads. It depends on who holds it. I have no doubt you didn't want to harm anyone. But those dwarves, they are organizing a backside auction to sell your latest invention to the highest bidder, Hammond sighed heavily. It was meant to send messages across kingdoms and even continents using energy waves. At least, that's what I designed it for initially until the dwarves forced me to make some terrible changes. You know the dwarves see destruction in everything. They are consumed by their hatred toward the elves. As much as I'd like to hear more about your invention, I want to know more about what kind of changes you made and what it could do, Hammond hesitated for a moment. He opened and closed his mouth. You have to tell me. We still have time to fix this, Noah reassured Hammond. And when Hammond looked like he was about to give Noah a lecture on the intricacy of his invention and all the scholarly stuff, Noah rephrased his words. Use simple terms, okay? I am not a brainiac like you. How do I put this simply? Hammond rubbed his chin, simplifying everything in his mind so Noah could understand. After a brief moment of pondering, Hammond finally constructed his sentence. The device I built, it could destroy anyone's organs inside if they were exposed to the energy waves long enough. No defense spell or runes will save you. These energy waves will ignore everything and melt your organs inside. Chapter 831 On to destroy the weapon, despite energy shields and defense spells? Asked Noah. Yes. Nothing would save you. Those energy waves go through anything, including your shields, spells, and anything for that matter, Hammond's answer stunned Noah. If what Hammond said was true, which Noah believed to be true, the harm the device could do was unimaginable. Because of the spells and cultivation stages, a group of people in the lower stages of the cultivation wouldn't go to war against stronger cultivators. At the end of the day, these cultivation stages kept the world peace in a delicate balance. However, this device would change it forever. Suppose someone had mass-produced this device and sold it like typical swords and weapons, Cultivation stages wouldn't stop people from going to war against the strong. While the strong could retaliate against and when powerful cultivators fought, it was the commoners in the world that suffers the most damage. The dwarves finished building the device a month ago and forced me to build a prototype to show others what it could do, said Hammond. Where is this device of yours?
It's not mine. Not anymore. Mine doesn't kill people. They forced me to change my device to something else.
Supreme Guardians. Once the dwarves sell it to the highest bidder, there is no stopping them from mass producing it. I designed it to be built with common materials and easy to produce for the sake of the poor. Noah rubbed his temples as it turned out to be a bigger problem than he initially thought. He couldn't help imagining the device in the hands of the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord was already rapidly growing in terms of power, influence, and number of soldiers in his army. Once the Dark Lord got hold of the weapon, the advantage the Great 8 clans had would become a thing of the past.
Tell me, Hammond, Noah leaned forward. Do you think your device could kill a half-immortal or people above it?
Hammond went silent for a moment to think about Noah's question. To be honest, Hammond didn't think who was the strongest his device could kill as much as he thought how far his device could send messages. Theoretically, it's possible. After you reach the half-immortal stage, your body goes through changes both physically and mentally. I haven't seen the dwarves putting a half-immortal against their weapon. But with enough resources, time, and talent, they could modify it to be effective against half-immortals too.
It is possible.
Oh God, what have I done? Hammond gasped and stuttered, realizing the potential threat his invention could cause. Time, resources, and talent are what the dwarves have in abundance, Noah sighed.
Listen to me, Supreme Guardian. You have to find it and destroy it.
Don't think of using it against the Dark Lord or his army. Nothing good will come from that. Noah wasn't sure of that, but he made no promise to Hammond. Instead, he questioned Hammond. Let's just say I find it and destroy it as you said.
What's stopping the dwarves from building the weapon again from scratch? Asked Noah.
The dwarves may haven't designed the weapon, but they built it with their own hands. If Noah's experience with dwarves was anything, he knew they could build the weapon later on.
My blueprints. They have them in a secured safe with the weapon itself.
If you destroy those, the dwarves won't be able to build it again. It's too complex for them to build it again using guesswork. Where is it? Asked Noah to see Hammond shake his head. I only knew it was somewhere in Dalgaram. They didn't give me a room with windows to see what was going on outside. I was a prisoner to them. A few minutes later, Alicia and Norvin entered the room with a map of Dalgaram.
They placed the map on the table between Noah and Hammond. Hammond, you are going to help us locate the weapon and the blueprints.
Let's begin with the size of the weapon, said Noah.
How big is it? Can you fit in a room?
Hammond shook his head. More like you need a hall, a spacious one at that.
Like a throne hall, said Hammond.
Noah picked up the quill, drenched it in ink, and circled a few areas in the map. They all had paces which had halls big enough like a typical throne hall. Norvin's brows arched up, seeing Noah had actually circled the Dwarven King's palace itself. What's the size of the prototype you mentioned that the dwarves built? It's smaller compared to the real thing. The last time I saw it, it was the size of a carriage. Noah rubbed his clean-shaven chin. They couldn't have openly transported through the stress. Our men would have noticed it. They must have used the underground tunnels. Dalgaram had more underground tunnels than the hares in Norvin's true form. When the dwarves were at war with the elves several hundred of years ago, they built these tunnels to transport weapons and men, avoiding the elven eyes. Then after the war ended, they used these tunnels to transport goods throughout the kingdom. With time, many of the underground passages got forgotten, and their maps just disappeared. However, the rumor was the Han Torum still possessed the full map of the underground passage. With a flick of his wrist, Noah took out a translucent parchment and placed it above the Dalgaram map. The candlelight illuminated the various webs of lines running throughout the kingdom. Is that what I think it is? Norvin's eyes widened in shock.
Yes.
Every dwarf indeed has a price, said Noah. Obviously, he was not proud of bribing a dwarf, but he had no choice. Unfortunately, it wasn't gold coins he used to bribe the dwarf but a favor. So when the time came, Noah had to repay the favor. Noah felt the price was worth it if he could stop a mass destruction weapon from falling into the wrong hands. After Noah placed the underground tunnel map on the Dalgaram map, he noticed several tunnels running beneath the area he had circled previously. A smile merged with Noah's smile as he figured out the place where the dwarves were holding the weapon. He knew the dwarves were holding an auction in the entertainment district in Embercrest. Since the prototype was the size of a carriage, he established that they had to move it through the tunnels. And only one circled place was connected to the theater through a tunnel, the shipyard.
You said your room had no windows, right? Have you noticed metal rust quickly in your room? Asked Noah, although he knew what would be Hammond's answer. Bow that you ask me, yes.
The dwarves mostly used wood, but when my inventions required the iron, and they indeed rusted a bit sooner than I used to. That was because you were close to the ocean, said Noah. Realization hit Hammond as he figured out why the dwarves were so adamant about moving the weapon to a safer environment. As much as Hammond knew his inventions, he lacked the people skills to read people and predict their behavior like Noah. Norvin, gather the team and tell them we are moving out in 10 minutes, Noah ordered Norvin. He then turned his gaze toward Xianxia. Keep him safe. As far as the dwarves are concerned, Hammond died in the accident. To the rest, Hammond doesn't exist. No matter what, the Dark Lord or his army cannot learn we have him. The moment Hammond heard Noah mention the Dark Lord, he shuddered.
You think the Dark Lord might target me? Why? Oh my God. What did I do?
Shit. Hammond collapsed on the chair behind him. He sweated bullets as his entire body trembled uncontrollably.
Shit, he is having a panic attack, Xianxia coldly said.
Norvin was actually surprised that even a hostage like Hammond had heard about the Dark Lord enough to have a panic attack when he learned the Dark Lord might target him. It was quite shocking for Norvin to see people pissing their pants just by the mere mention of the Dark Lord's name. After Ghost revealed himself as the Dark Lord and destroyed the entire island of Ithilien, some people refused even to address him by his name, Ghost. More and more people were joining in this fear parade and addressing him only as the Dark Lord. Even some of the Guardians weren't an exception to this. Noah immediately tossed the pill into Hammond's mouth and calmed his nerves. 3 pills. Noah used 3 pills, and they were quite powerful. Still, Hammond took them like candies. Relax, take a deep breath, Noah slowly said to Hammond.
We will keep you safe. He won't get to you because he doesn't know you exist. Besides, he is in the demon's grave.
So you are safe here. Noah's words somehow calmed Hammond. He had that certain effect on people since he was the god of light. His aura could bring hope and calmness to everyone, just like Michael's aura could bring our fear and hopelessness. You will soon be relocated to one of our safe houses, and no one will ever bother you again. You will be able to work on your inventions that make the world a better place, not weapons to do the opposite. You have my word, Noah promised Hammond. Xianxia knew most of the Guardians, and even Andreas would disagree with Noah. Instead of wasting Hammond's talents inventing things that helps the commoners, they would prefer building new, more powerful weapons that could give them an edge in the fight against the Dark Lord. A world without the Dark Lord was a better world for everyone, including commoners. But Noah did not think like that. He knew any weapon they created with Hammond's talents would eventually land in the wrong hands, especially when people were so easy to bribe and blackmail. Noah did not want to take that chance. After calming down Hammond and leaving him with Xianxia, Noah, and Norvin left the room and returned to Noah's room. Next stop, the shipyard in Dalgarum, said Noah before activating the teleporter array in his room. Chapter 832 Noah's reluctance to capture the Dark Lord after leaving the Winston Manor via teleportation array. Noah appeared in an empty room lit with candles. This was one of the Guardian Guild's safe houses in Dalgarum. The Guardian Guild had safe houses everywhere except in the Dark Ocean, obviously. A circular chakra with countless intricate runes and symbols glowed underneath Noah's feet. He stepped out of the chakra as his team appeared in the room one by one. Everyone is here, said Norvin. He quickly transformed into his true form and leaped onto Noah's shoulder. Dark curtains blocked the sunlight from entering the room. Noah went to the windows and slightly moved it to see the ocean through the glass. The crystal blue ocean stretched endlessly into the horizon. Everywhere he looked, the dwarves littered the complexly planned streets. This complexity was about to make Noah's life much easier. Since it was still midday, most of the dwarves were at their work and not terrorizing the streets. What's the plan, Supreme Guardian? Neela, a fledgling guardian, asked Noah. She was one of Noah's elites handpicked to be on his team. The 12 guardians in the room served and answered only to Noah. They might not be as strong as the Alpha Guardians or many in the guild, but each of them was loyal, incorruptible, and upheld the Guardian Guild's morals like their lives depended on it. To fight evil and win against corruption, Noah needed more than cultivation power. He needed soldiers with morals. He planned to make them the next generation of great elders who fought beside Andreas. Of course, Noah had the option to resurrect the elite elder guardians with the keys scattered throughout the world. However, Noah avoided searching for the keys regardless of Andreas' words. Because lately, Noah and Andreas had more disagreements and arguments than usual. Noah didn't want the elder guardians to join Andreas and sway him to do something he was against. Besides, Noah barely had enough time to search for the arrows Xianxia forged. Unlike Michael, Noah preferred to get things done with his own hands instead of sending the guardians. Nothing too complicated. Hit the shipyard, find the weapon the dwarves built and the blueprints, destroy them, and get out of there before Han Torum learns we were there, Noah simplified the plan. Hearing his plan, Neela removed the silver helmet, revealing her squared face with fiery red hair. Freckles spread around her nose and cheekbones like sprinkles on a cake. They added an extra layer to the red-haired beauty. Although she was nowhere close to Zanali or Alicia in terms of beauty, Neela had a warrior spirit that Noah admired. She was a valuable asset and a good friend to him. But Supreme Guardian, are we going to destroy the blueprints alone or the weapon too? Asked Neela. The silvered armored soldiers focused on Noah, waiting for his answer. Instead of giving them a quick answer, Noah looked at the blue ocean through the window. He focused on the rhythmic waves to achieve a sense of peace both physically and mentally. Both. If we take this weapon, someone else will create a countermeasure. It would eventually lead them to build a more powerful weapon. Then another countermeasure and another more powerful weapon. Eventually, it will become a cycle until we have nothing but wars on our hands. It might sound dramatic in my imagination at this point, but I promise you, it will happen, Noah explained to Neela, paused for a moment, and continued. I don't think the Dark Lord will destroy the weapon. In fact, he will use it against us in a heartbeat, said Norvin, resting upon Noah's shoulder. Exactly my point. I am not him, and we won't use such a brutal killing machine against anyone, including the people in his army. They deserve punishment, not death, said Noah. Can I speak my mind, Supreme Guardian? Asked Neela. Noah nodded. He always allowed his team to speak freely and listen to them instead of outright shutting them down. Noah believed to be an effective team, communication was vital. When the final war with the Dark Lord arrives, people will die, Supreme Guardian. Both sides will suffer casualties. Deaths are inevitable. This weapon might be the edge we need against the Dark Lord. Wars are won by soldiers, not by weapons. If you believe in a weapon more than yourself, you need to reevaluate yourself, Noah said calmly about what he truly believed in. Before we leave, when are we going to address the elephant in the room? Norvin turned his gaze toward Noah. What? Asked Noah. We never talked about the Dark Lord knowing about the auction. We knew Valmos went missing, presumably dead, who had supposedly received an invitation to participate in the Han Torum auction. And we never found the invitation on his body. You and I both know Gaia written all over the dead bodies, said Norvin. If she killed them, there is a good chance she would attend the auction, Supreme Guardian. We can nab Saravar and the Dark Queen herself. 2 birds in 1 stone, Neela suggested, but Noah brushed it off with a smile. Just imagine what Ghost would do if we captured his love of life. Just imagine. Norvin closed his eyes for a moment and only saw death and destruction. Fear crept down Norvin's spine. Just imagining the Dark Lord bringing his wrath, as Noah said. Not to mention it's Gaia we are talking about. If capturing her was that easy, Zanali and Nagaland would have done it by now. Until I am certain something could hold either of them, I am not going to risk trying to capture them. It has only led to death. This was the biggest reason why Andreas and Noah had such arguments lately. On the one hand, Noah believed it was not wise to try to capture the Dark Lord without finding a way to hold him down. On the other hand, Andreas argued that the more they leave the Dark Lord alone, the stronger he would become and the harder it would be to capture him later. In a sense, both of them were right. Even Skyhall was dumbstruck after Michael escaped the cage that was designed to keep him restrained. Not only did he escape, but he also killed Peter inside the very cage that Alicia put him in. Every time they tried to capture him, they ended up with more blood on their hands. Hence, Noah decided to let the Dark Lord be until he finds a way to stop him permanently. Enough talking. Let's go and finish the task at our hand. Noah waved his hands as he prepared to leave the room. When he talked about the Dark Lord and Gaia, he noticed a sliver of fear in everyone's eyes, including Norvin's. That fear was the Dark Lord's most powerful weapon, and Noah knew he must find a way to break this fear. As long as the people feared the Dark Lord, they would be easy to brainwash and sway to the dark side. After leaving the safe house, Noah and his team used the dark alleyways to reach the sea without drawing much attention. As Noah stood on golden grains of sand, he looked up at the brilliant sky adorned with dazzling blue color and puffy clouds that formed different shapes in the sky. The goddess-like sun's face was being embraced by the demure navy fingertips of the skyline. The small crystals in the sand glimmered and twinkled brilliantly against the sun rays. Away from the immense sea, white foams from the waves gathered gently onto the golden shore. Every sight and sound stimulated a sense of composure and serenity. The effect was heightened by the absence of the noisy bustle of guardians complaining, rummaging of scrolls, and Andreas lectures, only to be exposed to the never-ending music of the waves and to breathe the fresh air instead of the stale atmosphere of his room. It was not easy to describe the effect of this sight, but it could only be strangely deciphered in his mind. His team was ordered to equip normal clothes instead of silver armor, which would most definitely draw attention from the dwarves. Eventually, Noah reached the ocean, where he saw a couple of dwarven kids building sandcastles. The sight of children playing without a worry in the world warmed Noah's heart. Looking at them made him want to destroy the weapon even more. If the weapon fell into the wrong hands and they started to slaughter people with it, the blame would ultimately fall on the dwarves. It was not fair to blame all the dwarves for something a few dwarves filled with hatred had done. While Noah was drowned in the serenity of the beach and thoughts, one of the dwarven children noticed Noah. She waved at Noah, showing no hatred and hostility toward humans. This was the world Noah had been trying to create lately, a world without hatred and fear toward one another. In fact, he was more focused on solving disputes between races and helping commoners than dealing with the Dark Lord and his army. Noah waved back at the kid, which brightened the kid's face like someone had lit a candle inside her head. Then before the other kids could notice Noah, he disappeared into the ocean with his team. Instead of going to the shipyard on foot, they decided to go underwater. That way, the element of surprise would be on their side, and they could catch the dwarves before they alert Han Torum. Hammond and the weapons he helped the dwarves build were off-the-books operation. So even if the Guardian Guild infiltrated it and stole the weapon, Han Torum couldn't retaliate directly because such an operation doesn't exist officially. However, Noah planned to keep the guild out of the picture because the last thing he wanted was a cold war between the Guardian Guild and Han Torum. At this point, any conflict the Guardian Guild gets into would benefit the Dark Lord more than anything. Noah and his team were quick swimmers. They managed to reach the shipyard, which was built in the water, in a few minutes. But before emerging from the water, Noah closed his eyes, spreading his senses around the area to locate the dwarves in the shipyard. Having no idea a team of guardians was under them, the dwarves continued with their day-to-day work, which was building ships and a weapon of mass destruction. Chapter 833. The elves did it from a bird's view. The shipyard was built in a way that would look like a giant T. The left side of the shipyard had a frigate almost finished being built, and the other side had a man-o'-war. The dwarves were building these ships under the king's order. Although Han Torum was one of the great 8 clans, their leader was the king himself, unlike the Guardian Guild, where the leader was no king but was called Supreme Guardian, who answered to no king. Meanwhile, the straight platform stretching toward the ocean contained materials needed to build the ships. It had a warehouse and a giant forge that fumed heat and ash. Noah could hear the dwarves hitting metal with their hammers. Thanks to his senses, he located 6 dwarves on guard. 2 dwarves stood on the shipyard's edge, looking at the ocean. 2 more dwarves patrolled the forge while another 2 dwarves stood on either side of the roof with their crossbows. Noah swam toward a cargo ship docked at the shipyard and slowly emerged from the water. Luckily, the cargo ship was the size of a small fishing ship and had no dwarves on board. It was empty as far as Noah could see. "I count 6 dwarves, Supreme Guardian," Neela whispered after emerging from the water. "No more calling me by my rank or name," Noah said to Neela and the others. "Position yourself to take out the dwarves at the same time. Wait for my signal." "As you wish," Neela said before merging into the water once again. His team was competent, and he didn't need to micromanage them every single time. They coordinated among themselves and positioned them from where they could take out the dwarves with blow darts. These darts were laced with Noah's own concoction, a powerful knockout serum. Since all these dwarves were at the body-strengthening stage, they only had to use a small dosage. "Is it true the Dwarf King is only a core formation warrior?" How could they be one of the great 8 clans when their leader is just a core formation warrior? Norvin asked Noah. Don't underestimate the dwarves by their weak cultivation power. They substitute that with connections, wealth, and their superior dwarven engineering. Also, have you heard of Moguls, the mercenary guild? The dwarves in there aren't weak. They use some kind of blood ritual to boost their cultivation. While the team was taking their position, Noah discussed the dwarves with Norvin. When it came to what was happening in Aur, Norvin pretty much had no idea. He was learning the power dynamics and the other racers in Aur little by little. So Norvin seemed a little ignorant to some in the guild. Noah noticed Neela and his team raising their thumbs, indicating they were in position. They waited for his signal as Noah leaned to the side, taking another look at the dwarves. Then, he snapped his fingers, creating a quick flash of light. This flash was the signal. And the moment the team saw it, they raised their blowguns, blew into it, and sent a dart soaring through the air. Ouch! Blimey! One of the dwarves slapped his neck as he felt a sting. But there was something between his hand and neck. The dwarf pulled it out to see a tiny town-inch arrow made of what seemed to be silver. In a blink of an eye, the serum kicked in as the dwarves rolled their eyes upwards before collapsing down. Move! Noah ordered the team as he leaped out of the water and dashed into the shipyard. Although the shipyard where the dwarves build secret weapons, they didn't put too many dwarves to guard. They believed too many guards would draw unwanted attention to the place. Hence, they had few guards, and they never opened their mouths about the underground facility, even when they were drunk. Their secrecy worked in Noah's favor. Inside the shipyard, he saw countless ship parts and giant chains hanging from the ceiling. Everywhere he turned, he saw nothing but metal, ship parts, wood, and empty mugs. Norvin leaped onto a chain above and looked around the shipyard to locate the underground passage. The dwarves might be drunk and hot-headed but not stupid enough to keep the weapon in plain sight. Norvin's eyes glistened like rubies as he used magical perception to see through the shipyard. Everything seemed normal and not out of place until his gaze fell on a golden train running down from a lever hidden behind a stack of wooden crates. There, Norvin pointed his finger at the wood crates as Noah and the team slowly sneaked toward it. Meanwhile, they noticed a couple of dwarves walking toward them. They fell down as fast as they entered the room. Noah turned and saw Neela with the blowgun. Her reaction was too fast to the point none of her teammates realized that she had just fired 2 blow darts. Noah gave a nod of approval before turning his gaze back to Norvin. "Knock out everyone and meet me down," said Noah. Since Norvin's true form was small and he could move around the shipyard without getting detected, Noah tasked Norvin with knocking out the dwarves. Even if he somehow got caught, the dwarves wouldn't connect this to the Guardians. After all they saw was a monkey. Speaking of being a monkey, Norvin took out a brown pill from his space ring and tossed it into his mouth. As soon as the pill melted down, his golden fur turned mud brown. Without the shiny golden fur, he looked like a regular monkey. "Go ahead," Norvin whispered, turned around, and leaped toward the shipyard's left side, where they were building a frigate. "Follow me," Noah said to his team as they slowly sneaked toward the crates. When they reached the stack of crates neatly placed on top of each, Noah slightly moved the stacks. The wooden crates were surprisingly heavy, which made Noah wonder what was inside of them. The crates moved, making a creaking sound. Then the lever was exposed. However, it was not the typical lever that, when pulled down, would open a door. Instead, this lever made of thick, black metal had numerous tiny gears, nuts and bolts. On top of that, there were 6 keyholes beside the lever. "Should we search those dwarves? They might have the keys," said Neela. Noah nodded as the team swiftly moved away from Noah to search the dwarves. A few minutes later, Neela and the others returned to Noah. Unfortunately, they came empty-handed. "We found no keys, Supreme Guardian. All they had was their swords and mugs." Neela creased her sword-sharp brows. They thought coming here empty-handed would disappoint Noah. On the contrary, he just smiled. Honestly, he expected the dwarves to have some kind of mechanism to protect the entrance. Otherwise, it would be too easy for anyone to enter their secret lair. Fortunately for him and unfortunately for the dwarves, Noah possessed a primordial flame. Neela's face brightened with the blue flames dancing above Noah's hands. No matter how many times they had witnessed the blue flames, they still had the same dumbfounded look on their faces when Noah conjured the flames for the zillionth time. The flame had a certain effect on the Guardians. The heavenly flames had a radiant energy that made them calm, courageous, and fearless. Under their gazes, Noah moved the ball of heavenly flames toward the lever and let the heat creep into the keyholes. The metal slowly turned blue to the color of the flame. Inch by inch, the heavenly flames melted down the lock, and then the lock clicked. Noah pushed open the door, revealing a dimly lit staircase that led to the dwarven secret lair. But the opening came with a catch. They weren't built with humans and long-legged species in mind. Instead, it was meant for the dwarves to use. Hence, the doorway was only 4 feet tall. Noah crouched down and entered the doorway, followed by his team. They were careful not to make any sounds until they could locate the weapon and the dwarves guarding it. After climbing down almost 50 steep steps, everyone, including Noah, felt a chill running down their spines. Hammond wasn't kidding when he said the weapon was massive in size. It was almost the size of a frigate. Compared to it, the prototype was just a baby. The weapon didn't even need to be powered up, but if someone simply blew into one end, the bell-shaped mouth would amplify the volume loud enough to kill several commoners. "Put on your masks," Noah ordered the team. He saw several dwarves and no way of knocking them out without getting caught. One by one, Noah's team put on a porcelain mask resembling the face of a mannequin. When they wore the masks, their ears grew a few inches outwards, making them look pointy and elven-like. Those who look at Noah's team would immediately believe they were elves wearing masks. The dwarves and elves hated each other for all reasons, and Noah didn't think adding one more to the pile wouldn't make much of a difference. Initially, he considered using black skull masks to portray themselves as the Dark Lord's army. But after thinking of the dwarves' nature of hot-headedness, he immediately removed that idea from his head. Because if the dwarves went against the Dark Lord, he would kill them, and he would reduce their entire clan to the ground without a shred of mercy. Noah slowly walked forward, stretching his arms and neck. "Stop what you're doing, you filthy animals!" Noah's thunderous voice swept across the yard. He was quite good at the way elves would speak to the dwarves in a situation like this. The dwarves almost jumped from their feet when they heard the sudden voice. They immediately jumped down from the weapon, rushed out from the corners, and climbed down through the chains with their battle axes in hand. Bloody elves! The dwarves were more furious than they were shocked. Just the sight of pointy ears made their blood boil. The dwarves didn't even mind the huge cultivation gap between them. That was why the dwarves were often called hot-blooded and borderline stupid when it came to a battle. "Kill those fucking pointy-eared fucks!" One of the dwarves raised his battle axe, crying out loud. Chapter 834: Save or Destroy the Weapon. The dwarves let out a battle cry that echoed through the entire space. They rushed at Noah and his group without regard for their lives. Just the sight of pointy ears in their domain twisted something inside the dwarves. Their killing intent skyrocketed as a dwarf threw his battle axe at Noah. The axe soared through the air, but Noah simply flicked his wrist as the axe froze in the air, turned around, and flew straight back to the dwarf. Only, the dwarf couldn't stop the axe. It hit the dwarf straight on the head, knocking him out cold in an instant. Noah's team scattered around the space in a blink of an eye. Each used their own speed spell to enhance their speed to the point the dwarves barely saw them. Wind rustled every time Noah's team ran past them. The previously silent workshop of the dwarves turned into a battle zone. Without being able to see the intruders, the dwarves swung their axes left and right blindly. "Stay still and fight us, motherfuckers! I want them dead!" The dwarves screamed as loud as they could. Suddenly, a dwarf froze for a moment before falling down. It happened so quickly. One moment he was fine, and the next, he fell to the ground like a lump of coal. Instead of reaching for their fallen comrades, the dwarves roared at Noah and his team, whom the dwarves couldn't see anymore. "What have you done? You will pay for this." The dwarves boiled in rage as their eyes looked like they were about to pop out of their sockets. Their roars could be heard from anywhere in the space. Soon, the dwarves fell one by one. Noah wasn't wasting any more time on the dwarves. He knocked the wind out of many dwarves just with his fists. Eventually, Noah and his team knocked out every dwarf in the hall and gathered before the weapon. "Any idea how to destroy this without making a fuss?" "Too much fuss, I mean," said Neela. "Before we destroy the weapon, look for a safe." "It must be here somewhere," said Noah. Noah's team nodded before heading out to search for the safe, leaving Noah with the weapon. Noah started to walk around the weapon in the hope of trying to get a better understanding of the weapon. He wondered how Hammond came up with such a bizarre contraption to exchange messages between two places without the use of arch energy. As he reached the weapon's back, he noticed a door. Noah twisted the golden knob, opening the door. When the door opened, his face was illuminated by the jars lined up inside. His neck hair stood up due to the electric energy coming from the jars. There were almost 50 jars, and each had balls of lightning inside. Lightning in a bottle. Who would have thought that? Noah smiled. Noah tried to pull out a jar, but they were held in place by a magnetic field. So this is what powers up the weapon. How in the hell did these dwarves manage to catch lightning in bottles? Say whatever about the dwarves, they never ceased to amaze Noah with their innovations. Granted, Hammond was on another level compared to the dwarves, but it didn't mean the dwarves were incompetent. It was just their hatred toward the elves that got the better of them and forced them to kidnap Hammond. Still, Noah felt like he was missing something in this whole story. He couldn't put his finger into what it was, but his gut told me he was missing something, a crucial piece of the puzzle. While his team was turning the place upside down, searching for a safe, Noah pulled out a jar from the power compartment and put it in his space ring. He had a feeling this might come in handy later. After closing the compartment, Noah continued to walk around the weapon. When he walked a full circle around it, Neela returned to him with a proud grin on her face. "We found it," said Neela. "Lead the way." Noah sighed in relief inside. He was glad everything had gone according to plan till now. The red-haired beauty led Noah to the safe that was located in a small room. When Noah entered the brightly lit room, he was welcomed by a long oak table, chairs tall enough to accommodate dwarves, and numerous racks filled with parchment and scrolls. Whoever occupied the room didn't give a damn about tidiness. Everything was lying around out of order. It would be a miracle if anyone could find something in the room. The parchment and papers on the ground rustled as they entered the room. "There it is." Neela pointed at the safe built inside the wall to Noah. Just like the lever they used to get into this area, the safe had several keyholes as well as tiny gears. If Noah wanted to get the blueprints unharmed, he would have bothered to look for the keys. Since he was here to obliterate the plans, he just went to the safe and sent a stream of heavenly flames into the keyholes. The entire safe melted down like butter in a few moments. Then, Noah turned his focus onto the bigger problem, the weapon itself. "How do you plan to destroy it?" asked Neela. "With these." They heard Norvin's voice. When they turned to the doorway, they saw Norvin, walking toward them in his human form. He carried a red oak barrel on his shoulder. "Explosives. I found this in a room. Apparently, it's a new kind of explosive, more powerful and more stable." "At least that's what I heard from the dwarves before I knocked them out cold," said Norvin. "Push this baby into the weapon and watch it go kaboom." Problem solved. Norvin placed the barrel heavily on the ground as Noah's team almost leaped out of the room. "I told you. It's stable." "Stop messing around," said Noah with an amused smile. "I will take care of destroying the weapon. You guys go ahead and get the dwarves to safety." "I don't want them to get caught in the blast," said Noah. If it was Michael, he wouldn't have bothered with saving the dwarves. They built weapons to kill people, so they deserve to die. That would have been Michael's argument. Luckily for the dwarves, Noah wasn't a vengeful god like Michael. He was merciful. "I will signal you when we get them to safety," said Norvin before leaving the room with Noah's team. After they left, Noah carried the barrel to the weapon. With a simple leap, Noah reached the weapon's mouth and slowly rolled the barrel down after he attached a rope around the barrel. Noah hovered around the weapon waiting for Norvin's signal. Almost 5 minutes later, Noah heard a roar in the distance. Noah could recognize that roar in his sleep. That was Norvin in his true golden baboon form. Only a few people had seen his true form, which stood 8 feet tall and quite terrifying to look at. "That's my cue," Noah mumbled as he raised a hand toward the roof. Then, a beam of light shot through the roof, creating a hole wide enough for Noah to escape through. He slowly hovered toward the hole with the rope attached to the explosive barrel in his hand. When he was just a few meters away from the hole in the roof, Noah snapped his fingers as sparks flew into the rope. Blue fire immediately engulfed the rope and traveled through the rope like a blue dragon. Eventually, the flame traveled into the weapon, away from Noah's sight. For a few moments, nothing happened. Noah just waited for something to happen in utter silence. The silence only lasted for a few moments though. Boom! Noah heard the sound of a muffled explosion. In a blink of an eye, fire streamed out of the weapon's mouth, and the weapon exploded into bits and pieces. The sheer force of the explosion alone sent Noah flying directly through the hole. Norvin wasn't kidding when he said the explosive was more powerful. A single barrel was enough to destroy a colossal weapon to pieces and shake the entire building. Noah felt truly lucky that he put the barrel into the weapon instead of making it explode outside it. If that were the case, the explosion would have been several times more powerful and destroyed the entire building along with the adjacent buildings. Dark smoke rose to the sky itself, forming a giant cloud above the building. Noah used the cloud of smoke to his advantage and flew away from the place. While he was flying away, he saw more and more dwarves running toward the fire instead of away from it. He felt pity for the dwarves. But luckily, Noah cleared the building before setting up the explosion. His task here was done without a hiccup. Good thing Andreas used all his soul energy, brewing special potions for Noah. Otherwise, they would have had a huge argument about whether to destroy the weapon or not. By the time the higher-ups from Han Torum appeared at the shipyard, Noah and his team were long gone. All the dwarves they knocked out pointed at one group, the elves. As a result, the Empress would have a long discussion with her ministers and schedule another secret meeting with none other than the Dark Lord himself. Chapter 835 The Inside Man of the Dark Lord, a few days after Noah destroyed the weapon and the prototype. As evening cast her dusky gown, when the air became fresh and restful, the time of joyful reflection arrived. The brightly lit city of Ice Fair met the peach sky. The evening arrived in stately fashion, with all the grace of a breeze in repose. Mila was on her way to meet her friend and fellow teammate, Alvaro Torres. He lived alone in Ice Fair and worked hard to get to Noah's team. The cobblestone pavement was littered with people of all manners. It wouldn't be an understatement to say the Ice Fair was the hub of Kingdom Kethern. People came from everywhere to Ice Fair to enjoy their time and buy rare things. One could argue that Ice Fair was the second safest place after Penn Town, where the Supreme Guardian resided. Neela wore white robes and put on her hood to cover her face. Some unruly hooligans were fighting and rolling on the ground. Neela walked around a cart that barely avoided the two hooligans. She was on her way to Alvaro Torres to talk about collecting information on potential targets who might be helping the Dark Lord. Everyone in Noah's team was ordered to pursue information about the Dark Lord's subordinates in their free time. However, they were strictly ordered against going after them without Noah's permission. Considering Neela was an ambitious girl, she chose the Dark Lord's head of information gathering as her target. Noah and Alicia believed the Dark Lord had someone powerful, connected, and influential working under him who was responsible for recruiting people into their course as well as gathering information. Neela had a few strong suspects, including Sadie Kaplan, the Silver Moon prodigy. Unfortunately, everyone on Neela's list had higher positions in prominent clans or organizations. Interrogating them without any evidence was equal to killing her own career. That was where Alvaro Torres came into the picture. Alvaro Torres' aunt was an elder in Silvermoon, and Neela hoped to use his aunt to get a meeting with Sadie Kaplan, the most suspicious one on her list. Among the suspects, Sadie Kaplan had the closest relationship with Ghost and was the most likely candidate who would have been brainwashed by him. After navigating her way through the crowd, she finally arrived at the edge of the city where the nobles tended to live. Bright crystal orbs lit the square with its radiant blue light as Neela turned left and strolled straight into the path that had the sign Torres Manor. Since it was evening and most of the patrons were either drinking in taverns or immersing themselves in pleasuring activities, the path to Torres Manor was void of people. Peach trees accompanied Neela on either side of the path as she enjoyed the calm and peaceful stroll. Soon, she noticed an elegant manor at the end of the road. From the outside, the Torres Manor looked cozy. It was built with walnut wood and has granite decorations. Small, octagon windows added to the overall look of the house and have been added to the house in a fairly asymmetrical pattern. The manor was shaped like an L. The extension extended into overhanging wooden panels reaching the end of that side of the house. The second floor was bigger than the first, which created a stylish overhang on two sides of the house. This floor had a slightly different style than the floor below. The manor itself surrounded a gorgeous garden with many hidden lights that made the garden come to life at night. As she reached closer to the manor, she noticed two large chimneys sitting at the side of the manor. They fumed gray smoke, which indicated to Neela that Alvaro was home. Neela knocked on the door. "Alvaro." Neela gently tapped the wooden door. She heard a rustling noise coming from within as though Alvaro was rummaging through some parchments. Did I hear a girl's voice? Neela questioned herself. She could swear she heard a girl's voice coming from inside, but it couldn't be since Alvaro was single. "Alvaro,"
Neela knocked again. This time, she added a bit of force. For a few moments, Neela heard nothing. She slowly reached for the dagger dangling underneath her cloak. Even a few moments of silence were enough for fear to creep down their spines. As Supreme Guardians elites, they didn't have the luxury of taking things simply. The Dark Lord was known to strike when least expecting. So, Neela's heart and mind feared the worst. Luckily, Alvaro put her mind and heart to rest as he opened the door with his usual grin. Alvaro was a brown-haired youngster with a stubble beard. He was neither too tall nor too short, with a medium-built body. While he was not in the silver armor, he used to wear rather ordinary clothes, like black trousers and a loose-fit cotton shirt that revealed his chiseled chest and muscles. "What were you doing in there?" Neela didn't wait for Alvaro to invite her in. Instead, she pushed him aside and let herself in. Once she entered the room, she was greeted with a cozy fireplace, a comfy sofa set, and a puffy carpet that blanketed the wooden floor. "Please do come in." Alvaro rolled his eyes as he shut the door behind them. Neela plunged herself into the sofa and removed the cloak. "I swear I heard a girl's voice in there. Are you hiding one, Alvaro?" Neela teased Alvaro. "Look under the sofa," said Alvaro with a hint of sarcasm in his voice. Neela leaned forward and pretended to look under the sofa. "I bought a crate of ale from Embercrest." "You want a mug?" asked Alvaro as he went to the kitchen on the corner. "Where in the hell did you get the time to buy ale from the dwarves?" Neela turned around to see Alavro taking out a jade bottle from a wooden crate and pouring its content into 2 large mugs. The sweet aroma from the ale made her mouth water. Alvaro brought the 2 mugs to the sofa and sat beside her after handing over 1 mug to Neela. "Cheers. We deserve it." Alvaro clanked his mug against Neela's. "Yes, we do indeed. We made quite a mess in Dalgarum. Good thing the dwarves have no idea it was us. They are gonna hate the elves even more now, even though I don't know how they can hate them more," said Neela, taking a long sip from the mug, enjoying every bit of the dwarven brewed ale. Her taste buds danced in her tongue and thanked her wholeheartedly. "I gotta give credit to the dwarves. They do know how to brew good ale. I just wish Grayson was here with us," Neela signed. Grayson was one of the 2 guardians who lost their lives when the orc's self exploded. If it weren't for the silver armor, more guardians would have lost their lives that day. They felt truly lucky for the armor and the runes engraved in it. To Grayson and Kian, Alvaro raised his mug, toasting for their dead comrades. "And about that favor." Neela's voice trailed off. "It's on. You have been invited to the Silver Moon beverage party thanks to Aunt Tegan. You owe me one, and if you mess this up somehow, you don't know me," Alvaro chuckled. "I want to hug you." "Please don't." Alvaro raised both his hands to defend himself from Neela's hug. "Please remember everyone is innocent until proven guilty. You don't know if Sadie is in bed with him or not." "I will when I look her in the eyes," said Neela. After some chit-chatting and discussion about their lives, Neela left the manor and headed for her home to get some good night's sleep. It was Noah's new policy to get enough rest and sleep instead of overexerting themselves cultivating. "She is gone," Alvaro said, though his house looked empty. The smile on Alvaro's face disappeared, and instead, a darkened expression occupied his face. A breeze of wind blew past Alvaro as it almost snuffed out the fire and light in the room. Then, a shadow figure dressed in all black emerged from the darkest corner in the house. "Is she going to be a problem?" the dark figure asked Alvaro in a thick otherworldly voice. Alvaro had a difficult time hiding the fear creeping down his spine. He swallowed mouthful of saliva and managed to turn his gaze toward the dark figure. "No. She is just chasing some leads." "Good. Because if she is a problem at best, you will hear from Noah Winston." The dark figure paused for a moment, letting the silence sink into Alvaro's mind. "At worst, you will receive a visit from the Dark Queen," said the dark figure. Because of the dark hood covering his head, Alvaro couldn't make out the figure's features. Serving the Dark Lord could be a fruitful endeavor. "He will only ask you for your loyalty. In return, you can get anything in this world," said the dark figure as Alvaro rolled his eyes. "Spare me the sales pitch. What you're doing here is blackmailing." "The only reason you are here and I am not at Noah's home is I don't have a choice," Alvaro growled. To Alvaro's surprise, the dark figure chuckled. "Of course you have a choice. You can tell the Supreme Guardian that you feasted on a helpless woman when you weren't supposed to. You can tell him that your lust overshadowed your judgment. I heard your Supreme Guardian is a merciful person. What's the punishment for rape?" Castration and lifetime prison? You can ask for forgiveness. You always have a choice. The dark figure amused as Alvaro burned with rage inside. We will be in touch, the dark figure said, giving no damn about Alvaro's fury. The figure turned around to leave when he looked over his shoulder at Alvaro. We have eyes everywhere, Alvaro. Engrave that in your mind. I think we both agree you do not want to meet the Dark Queen. You will hear from me soon. As he said, the dark figure disappeared from the room. Alvaro felt sweat beads trickling down his face after the dark figure left. A sin he committed in the shadows came back to haunt him. He thought he escaped the sin, but now, he was forced to be the Dark Lord's inside man in the Guardian Guild. Chapter 836 Beast of Itenes, Current Day. Michael was on his way to harvest everything he needed to fix the gold coins problem. Taskin and Thilv accompanied Michael as Vidora chose to stay with the tribe because they liked how the wood elves treated them. Almost all the trees had sparkling blue leaves instead of the usual green leaves. Not only the cyan color of the forest but something fresh in the air that put everyone at ease. Michael felt the forest around him was alive. Any predators around here? Michael asked Taskin and Thilv. Except for the wolves Michael killed at Tar's campsite, Michael met no predatory animals. The rabbits, foxes, and birds Michael saw had sparkling bodies. They glistened under the canopy's shade. They used to be around, Taskin started to answer Michael. But ever since the demons occupied the mother tree, they ran deeper into the forest. This place crawled with all kinds of creatures before they invaded us. You cannot walk a minute in the forest without catching a glimpse of something. Now it feels so void of life, said Taskin. You might meet a few where we are going, my lord, said Thilv. She addressed him as my lord instead of the Dark Lord. Michael grew quite tired of being called the Dark Lord by the elves sooner than he expected. Therefore, he ordered them to call him like his subordinates and men, my lord. At first, the wood elves seemed reluctant, but after Michael ordered them, they changed how they addressed him. The three of them enjoyed their walk in peace. Instead of bringing a group of elves with him, Michael only brought Thilv and Taskin. This couple seemed competent and knew the forest like the back of their hands. Plus, Michael wanted to know more about the two wood elves. So the humans here worship me or any other god? Asked Michael. We don't know much about them, my lord. They live far, far away from the mother tree. We call them the Water Tribe, said Thilv. Because they live nearby water? Asked Michael as Thilv nodded. I want to meet them someday before I leave this world. Thilv and Taskin stopped walking when they heard Michael. They turned around, worried. Are you going to leave us, my lord? Thilv's eyes watered. Taskin was actually stunned to see Thilv behave this way in front of the Dark Lord. She was a warrior with an iron heart. She was an alpha of their tribe before he married her. Seeing her show her vulnerable side surprised Taskin. I told you, there is entirely a new world out there where I must be. But fear not, I will visit you often. When the time comes, I will build a gateway connecting the worlds so people can travel between, said Michael. Speaking of the other world, Michael wondered how to leave this place without using badass points. Somehow Michael believed there was another way to get out of this world. The past Dark Lord may have left something for him since he seemed to leave a lot of things to guide Michael in his path. The God's world? Thilv asked with a completely stunned face. More like a messed up world where I have lots of enemies, Michael chuckled. Jokes aside, I do plan to bring you there. But not before I fix everything here. Clothing, for example, said Michael. My lord, what is wrong with our clothes? Thilv's naive question almost made Michael laugh, but he smiled and gestured at them to lead the way. Almost after 7 hours, the sun slowly descended toward the horizon. One would expect the forest to get dark, but on the contrary, the trees and vegetation around them glowed brighter. The luminescent leaves, mushrooms, and barks lit the forest like neon lights. Michael let Taskin and Thilv take some rest before continuing their journey. He lost track of time as he followed them behind deeper into the forest. Eventually, Michael noticed the veil of mist slowly appearing in his sight. We are getting closer to the spot, my lord, said Taskin. He looked a bit uncomfortable and borderline afraid. They were stranded far away from the mother tree and her protection. Usually, the wood elves would avoid traveling deep into the forest at any cost. All tribe elders prohibited venturing deeper into the forest as they believed it made the wood elves mad. Before we go further, put this on your face. Michael threw them black face masks with filters built within.
They looked confused a bit until they saw Michael putting on the mask himself. After they put the masks on, they slowly walked through the fallen logs and knee-high vegetation. The deeper they went, the more they saw reddish leaves and trees instead of the bluish tree. Something turned the trees red, and Michael assumed the same thing that put the creatures to sleep. He looked around the trees and saw various creatures, such as rabbits, foxes, and even a green-furred tiger sleeping on the ground with its bellies up. The tiger purred, sleeping a few meters away from the trio. "Don't make any sudden noise," Taskin warned Thilv as he crouched down to blend in with his surroundings. Michael followed the wood elves, and after a while, he felt like he was back in Demon's Grave where everything had a red hue, like everything was drenched in blood. Not a single sound could be heard in that second. The eerie silence slowly turned into fear and anxiety. If Michael weren't here with them, Taskin and Thilv would have turned around and rushed out of this place instantly. But having their almighty god with them gave them enough courage to continue forward. They slowly walked past the sleeping tiger and arrived at a small pond. The crystal-clear water reflected the crimson-red surroundings as well as the silver mushrooms with black stars on them. Michael's eyes lit up as these mushrooms were what he looked for the most. "Pick these mushrooms as many as you can," said Michael, bent down to pick one from the ground. The silver mushroom let out a cry as though it had a mouth when Michael rooted it out from the ground. These mushrooms grew under the shady roof of the forest while berries lay ripening under the leafy dome of the forest like jewels. The grass was crispy under their feet. Every tree Michael saw was skyscraper tall. Good thing Vidora wasn't here, or they would have tried to pick and eat the fruits that shone like silver snowflakes. The forest smelled fresh and organic. Even Michael's mask couldn't stop the natural musty smell of forest from penetrating the filters and entering their nostrils. Anyone who didn't know about the forest and the plants would be tempted to pick some wild pears and eat them. However, Michael knew better than to eat anything in the forest around him. Because every single tree, fruit, and plant was radiating a poisonous miasma that would put the brain in some kind of coma until they died. The creatures sleeping had developed a partial immune system to avoid death, but they couldn't avoid getting high. Thilv and Taskin followed Michael's hand movement and rooted out the mushrooms exactly how he did it. They put the mushrooms in a pile, wondering how they were going to bring them to the tribe. While Thilv and Taskin were harvesting the mushrooms, Michael went to the trees with red barks and scraped down the black moth growing on them. Michael hummed a tune of the song he heard back on Earth while collecting the moth in a glass jar. The little alchemist living inside him was utterly delighted to collect new ingredients to brew an entirely new potion that would put a full stop to poverty once and for all. This potion would serve as a new drug that makes people high while not affecting their physical bodies. In other words, by taking this potion, nothing would change physically. The user would only feel mind-numbing pleasure and high for a short amount of time and crave more. Since Michael was not a drug dealer, he planned to brew an antidote to remove the craving and urge. Moreover, Michael planned to make this potion ridiculously expensive so that only the rich and noble would be able to afford it. This way, the commoners would be spared by the new sensation drug he was about to make. It was only a temporary measure to enable the coin flow. His end goal was to invest in legit businesses and hotel chains, not dealing drugs. Even the Dark Lord had standards and limits. The last thing he wanted was to have a bunch of druggies roaming the streets of his beautiful world. He blamed Noah for closing down Majestic and Hades, which pushed him to go into the drug industry. As they were peacefully harvesting herbs and various ingredients in the forest, Thilv's ears twitched. She immediately stopped harvesting the mushrooms, turned around, and saw Taskin slowly reaching for his bow. It seemed like he heard the same rustling that she had heard just a moment ago. Taskin and Thilv looked over their shoulder to see Michael calmly walking around picking blueberries. "My lord," Taskin whispered, trying to get Michael's attention. "There is something approaching us." "Yes, I know that," Michael calmly answered Taskin. The brown sack into which Michael put the blueberries disappeared along with the pile of mushrooms on the ground. He then strolled toward Thilv and Taskin. "Stand back. I'll deal with it," said Michael. Unlike the wood elves, Michael was able to see the beast approaching them through his X-ray vision. Thilv and Taskin heard a strange gnawing sound. Soon, their noses twitched as the air began to reek of blood. They tried to see what was happening, but the foliage in the trees blocked their sight. But Michael could see everything. The beast was feasting on the sleeping tiger, which didn't even move an inch. The tiger was too high on the elements mixed in the air. Michael waited for the beast to finish feasting and approach them. He slowly drew his black sword from the sheath on his back.
Somehow, the beast was immune to the air, unlike the tiger and the other creatures. Chapter 837 Fighting two beasts in the same day. Each moment felt like an eternity to Thilv and Taskin. They could hear their heartbeats slowly rising. Their eyes were fixed on the forest before them. Soon, the beast slowly stepped out of the cover of the trees and granted them a look at its body. Thilv and Taskin took a step back. The beast reminded Michael of the Komodo dragon back on Earth. It was a large lizard with long tails, a strong and agile neck, and sturdy limbs. The beast's tongue was red, forked, and oozed blood. It had a stone-color skin with distinct, large scales. The beast hissed at them but locked its gaze on Michael. Somehow, the beast sensed the real threat among the three was Michael. Perhaps the sword in his hand, or perhaps he himself threatened the beast. Michael felt Mother Luck was on his side today. While harvesting the ingredients, he pondered about the antidote. To brew an antidote, he needed something that was naturally immune to the air around him. That's where the beast came in. If he could get the beast's flesh and blood, he would be able to brew an antidote without a problem. Michael clenched his dark sword. One would be surprised to see the 3 dragons in his hilt wrap around his arms like they were alive and provide more grip. He didn't take out his second sword but decided to slice and dice the beast using one. Step by step, the beast strolled toward Michael. Thilv and Taskin slowly walked backward while maintaining their focus on the beast. However, the beast only focused on Michael. When the beast was just a few meters away from Michael, it started to gallop, increasing its speed significantly. Suddenly, the beast pushed its legs into the ground and lunged at Michael with its mouth wide open. The poor beast had no idea how fast Michael could move. He just swayed his body to the side and dashed forward with his blade tilted to the side. Thilv and Taskin felt a gust of wind blow past him as one beast became 2. Michael's sword cut through the beast's body like a hot knife through butter. 2 halves of the beast hit the ground with a sickening thud. Blood sprayed out everywhere, including Michael, Thilv, and Taskin. Michael sheathed his sword back into the sheath and turned around. The beast looked like neatly cut fish fillets, except it had more blood, bits of pieces of the tiger it just ate, and entrails. Although the wood elves were shocked at how quickly the beast died, they weren't disgusted by the sight of its dead body. This told Michael that these wood elves had witnessed much worse. Good, they aren't soft-bloods, Michael said to himself. He flicked his wrist as a dagger, and a glass jar appeared in his hand. Then, Michael squatted beside the 2 halves of the body and carved out the beast's heart, flesh, and collected its blood into the jar. Once again, Michael hated the system for not giving him any experience points. But then again, killing a creature with no cultivation level was as easy as stepping on an ant. It was no challenge or thrill. After collecting the body parts of the beast, Michael turned his focus on the ingredients. "Shall we continue?" asked Michael as Thilv and Taskin snapped back to reality. They continued to collect the mushrooms. Hours passed without their notice. Michael enjoyed the momentary peace and quiet. Eventually, Michael picked enough mushrooms and harvested enough ingredients to get his potion business running for a few months. This time would be enough for him to earn gold coins and invest or build businesses to generate passive income. "It's enough," said Michael. Thilv and Taskin were sweating. The task exhausted them quite a bit. "If you don't mind me asking, my lord, what are you planning to do with all these?" "They seem poisonous," Taskin asked Michael. "They are. But with a little bit of magic, the mushrooms could be turned into something special," Michael answered as he strolled toward the pond. He washed his face in the crystal-clear water. Then, he decided to return to the tribe. On the way back, Michael led them instead of the other way around. He memorized the path back to the tribe. Taskin and Thilv followed him while cautiously looking around their surroundings. Almost after walking in peace and quiet for an hour, Michael slowed down. The red forest was far behind them, and they entered the forest part with sparkling blue trees. "Something wrong, my lord?" Taskin questioned Michael. "Climb up this tree and stay there," Michael pointed at the tall tree beside him. Taskin and Thilv were bewildered, but they chose not to question their god. Taskin nodded as he put his back against the tree, boosted his wife to the top, and climbed up the tree with Thilv's help. They used the branches and holes in the tree as stepping stones to reach the top. Michael leaned against the tree as though he was waiting for someone. Suddenly out of nowhere, an arrow soared through the air, piercing the veins, foliage, and saplings. The arrow almost hit Michael's wrist where he wore the Olympus.
It didn't feel like whoever fired the arrow missed the mark but targeted the Olympus precisely. But before the arrow could hit Olympus and shatter it to pieces, Michael caught the arrow just a few inches away from Olympus. Upon sitting on the highest branch in the tree, Thilv and Toscan were stunned. As far as they could see, no one was there. Still, the arrow came from somewhere. "You are good marksman. I give you that." Michael's voice swept across the forest. "Pity you are not as good as you think you are," said Michael. He was nonchalant about the arrow or who fired it. Ever since he stepped onto the demon's grave, he had a feeling someone was following him. Although the environmental scanning sensed nothing, his instincts told him that he was being followed. Yet again, his instincts were spot on. Whoosh! Michael heard the sound of the whistling wind as another arrow came from another direction. Not even a second passed when another arrow soared through the forest from the opposite direction of the previous arrow. Michael caught the two arrows just in time before they hit Olympus. "Whoever you are, you want a fair fight. Am I right?" asked Michael. Arch energy from the crystals amplified Michael's voice to the point the creatures around him scattered away in fear. The arrows stopped. Then, Michael threw away the arrows and removed Olympus from his wrist. He had a feeling the one who fired the arrows was watching everything. Michael placed the Olympus on the ground and waited for the person to show themselves. Silence fell over them. A few seconds later, the vegetation around Michael rustled. Thrive and Taskin noticed something big and black approaching them. The figure lurked in the shadows and seemed to hide itself using the shadows. They perfectly blended with the forest despite how colorful the forest was. "Stay up there," Michael said to Taskin and Thilv when they seemed reluctant to stay still and let Michael handle the shadowy figure. The rustling noises pounded louder and louder as the figure finally stepped out of the shadows. Thilv and Taskin were caught off guard. Simply put, they were stunned. It was a giant black panther that walked on its 2 feet like a human. Michael remained calm as the black panther cautiously made his way toward Michael but kept a safe distance. When Taskin and Thilv looked closer, the black panther had more humanoid features than they initially saw. He had the face of a panther and shiny black fur, but his muscles and limbs looked more human than those of a panther. His black tail swayed with the wind. The black panther's eyes glistened with immense killing intent. Michael could feel the murderous lust radiating from the panther. "Where did I see you before?" Michael rubbed his chin. The black panther became more furious, seeing how calm Michael looked. However, except for his eyes, nothing betrayed the anger within the black panther's heart. It was a trait of a seasoned warrior. Michael was sure of that. They both slowly started to walk in a circle while maintaining eye contact. Michael snapped his fingers as his eyes brightened. "You were with Tanulia Valrin, the invisible bodyguard. I knew I'd seen you somewhere," said Michael. "But the rage within your eyes, it feels personal. Like I took away someone you loved." "Don't tell me you were in love with Tanulia," Michael snickered. "Nah," Michael shook his head. "It's much more. Jacoby," the black panther finally opened his mouth. His voice sounded extremely thick and gritty. Since there were no beast men in Itanes and Taskin and Thilv had never seen one, they were completely shocked. Their god looked smaller compared to the 7-foot monstrosity riddled with muscles. Yet, they saw no fear in the Dark Lord's eyes. Not that they expected a god to be afraid of a cat. "Jacoby." Michael tilted his head, trying to recall the name. "Sorry, no idea," Michael shrugged. Of course. Michael remembered Jacoby. Even if he didn't know the name, the Black Panther had a resemblance with only one person Michael had met, the one who tried to hunt down Gaia and almost succeeded. Everything started to make sense except how this Black Panther managed to not only enter the demon's grave but also come here. "I shall make you remember then." Ghost, the Black Panther addressed Michael by his name instead of the Dark Lord. Before he disappeared, he was tracking Gaia, the Queen of Nagaland. "Did you kill him?" asked the Black Panther. Michael could tell the Black Panther wanted some closure. He might be a good tracker, but he couldn't have found Jacobus' body because Michael burned it to ashes. The moment he agreed to track down Gaia, he sealed his own fate. "But did I kill him?" Michael rubbed his chin, pretending to think. Looking at the Black Panther and Michael, Thilv and Taskin were utterly confused. But judging by their words, they could understand that there was some kind of history between the two of them. Chapter 838 Cat and the Way Back Home. "Defeat me in a duel, and I might tell you what I did to Jacoby," Michael snickered. Thilv and Taskin froze when they felt the stillness in the air. Something was about to go down, and they felt it in every fiber of their being. Michael swayed to the side and bent his back as he heard the twang of a bow string. An arrow flew above Michael's head and struck the tree behind him. Michael looked up to see the Black Panther on the tree branch. In a blink of an eye, the Black Panther managed to leap onto the branch, getting a higher ground to attack Michael with his bow. The Black Panther nimble jumped to another branch. Then he descended to a lower branch and swung himself to another tree. His movements were graceful, so Michael could tell he had years of training. Michael drew his sword and deflected the arrows without breaking a sweat. Seeing the arrows causing no harm to him, the Black Panther rolled down from the tree and dashed at Michael. Michael jumped in the air before the Black Panther could cut his throat with the arrow he was about to fire. Then, the Black Panther took out a pair of jade daggers. He quickly changed course after his initial attack failed. With speed beyond anything or anyone Thilv and Taskin witnessed, the Black Panther lunged at Michael. The serrated edge of the blade grazed Michael's shoulder. But the knife barely cut the skin for the blood to seep through. Then it was Michael's turn. Michael brought down the black sword toward the top of the Black Panther's head. He quickly raised his daggers in an X above his head to block the black sword. But the Black Panther knew how sharp and strong the black sword was. He quickly, almost at the speed of lightning, deflected the sword using the daggers. Then, Michael swung his left fist at the Black Panther's face. He had to bring down his hand to block his fist. As Michael expected, the Black Panther instinctively lowered his hand to block the fist. Before the Panther could cut Michael's fist with his dagger, Michael swung the black sword, nicking the side of his face. Then, Michael lashed out and kicked the Panther's knee. "Ouch!" the Panther hissed in pain. Without giving the Panther time to retaliate, Michael dashed at the Black Panther, slamming him against the tree behind. The entire tree shuddered, shedding half of its sparkling leaves. Any weak man would have had his ribs crushed by sheer force. However, the beast men were built differently. They were far stronger, faster, and more agile compared to humans. Even when he was slammed against the tree, the Black Panther managed to flick his dagger, cutting Michael in the wrist. The sharp pain caused Michael to lose grip on the black sword. It flew away from Michael and landed on the ground with a thud. Michael hated losing his sword as he grabbed both the Panther's wrists and slammed them against the tree once again. This time, the Panther lost the daggers. "Not as weak as you thought, isn't it?" Michael asked, holding the Panther against the tree. Every muscle in Michael's body bulged. His ripped body stunned even Taskin. Clearly, the Black Panther underestimated Michi, raw strength. He and Gaia trained their physical bodies every single day like clockwork. Since he was an alchemist, Michael supplemented his body with healthy foods and potions to reach the peak of his physical strength. So even without celestial energy or arch energy, Michael was far stronger than any human at the same cultivation stage as him. The Black Panther groaned to muster every bit of his strength and head-butted Michael to escape his hold. Michael's nose cracked with a sickening crunch as the Black Panther leaped away from Michael. He needed to put some distance and re-evaluate his strategies to win against such a powerful opponent. Thilv and Taskin looked at the battle with horrified looks in their eyes. They witnessed their god bleed. The words Michael spoke about powerful people and enemies rang inside their brains. They could only imagine how powerful these people would be to make even a god bleed. The Panther heard Michael chuckling instead of groaning in pain. He slowly turned around and slapped the broken nose to align the cracked bones to their place. The blood stain on his front teeth and the villainous smile made Michael look evil. The Panther slowly realized why the entire world was afraid of him. If he had no brother to avenge, he would have avoided clashing with such a terrifying being. Not that he was afraid of the Dark Lord, but unlike his brother Jacoby, he avoided crossing paths with people like the Dark Lord, who would go to any lengths to seek revenge. It was too late for both of them. This feud could only be settled by blood. Michael wiped off the blood before dashing at the Panther once again. Fist met fist. Their fists clashed in the forest, and their feet danced beneath them. The Black Panther was quick, but so was Michael, despite removing the Olympus. Michael landed more blows on the Panther than the Panther did. Each punch created a heavy thud upon hitting their bodies. Their clash decimated everything below them and created a circle of dead plants. Several trees had human and cat-shaped holes and fist-sized holes. Although the Panther provided some extent of challenge, he was nowhere near defeating Michael. Ever since someone from the Vampire Death Squad called the Puma almost defeated Michael in close combat because he used Counter Serpent Mega, Michael was altering and perfecting his fighting technique. Coupled with Michael's brute strength, agility, and cat-like reflex, only a few people in the world could fight him head-to-head and survive. After a while, the panther started to breathe heavily as his movements became wobbly. Michael knocked him down to the dirt with a swift spinning wheel kick to the panther's head. When Michael approached the panther, the latter tried to stab Michael with a short blade he hid under his fur. But Michael kicked the blade and pinned his hand to the ground with his knees. "It's over," said Michael. He then proceeded to punch the panther in the face. A couple of punches made the panther's sight blurry. Michael showed no mercy as he continued to punch the panther until his fist ached. "Just because I cannot use cultivation energy doesn't mean you can defeat me. Look at me." Michael raised his voice. He grabbed the panther's face and turned it to look him in the eyes. "Now, tell me how you came here," Michael asked the panther. "You first. What did you do to Jacoby?" Instead of answering Michael's question, the panther questioned Michael. Michael drew the other black sword on his back and held it against the panther's throat. "Don't make this harder on yourself, kitty cat. You've been dancing with the devil way too long, and it's your time you paid the due. Go on, kill me. But I won't give you any answers until you tell me about what you did to Jacoby. System, scan him," Michael ordered the system in his mind. He hated asking the system, considering he had already taken out a loan, and the more he asked, the more he would have to pay. Nonetheless, the panther gave Michael no choice. Rather, Michael didn't want to give the panther closure. Scanning initiated. Surprisingly, the system asked for no badass points. Instead, it began to scan the panther. A beam of light only Michael could see brushed past the panther's body from head to toe. Suddenly, Michael noticed a glow on the panther's chest. When the light disappeared, a chain with a couple of beads glistened around the panther's neck. Each bead was the size of a coin and engraved with the face of a cat. The panther noticed something strange in Michael's eyes. It felt like his gaze was staring right through his soul. The panther squirmed, trying to escape. Michael grabbed the invisible necklace, and when he was about to rip it off the panther's neck, Michael felt a chill running down his spine. Every cell in his body screamed at him to dash away from the panther. And that's exactly what Michael did. He rolled away from the panther. Out of nowhere, a vortex appeared right where Michael was a second ago and pulled the panther right into it. The space distortion Michael felt at that moment was nothing he had ever felt. In a blink of an eye, the panther and the vortex vanished into thin air. "Damn it!" Michael cursed the teleportation portal. But he felt something in his hand. When he looked down, he saw a single coin in his palm. The silver coin with a cat's face radiated a dim glow in his hand. "That is your way home, host," said the system. "What is this?" Michael asked the question. He almost forgot Thilv and Taskin were watching him from above. The system level is too low to answer the question. The system's answer disappointed Michael. "How do I use dash?" Michael halted his question as he suddenly remembered the copper ring left behind by the past Dark Lord. He had a feeling that the copper ring might open a portal using the coin. But it was not the time for him to test the theory. There were so many unknowns in Itani's and the demon's grave. For now, getting home safely took high priority. However, before he could leave, he had to visit the ash field and see what Skyhall was up to. With few things and many questions in his head, Michael strolled toward where he put the Olympus, picked it up, and wore it around his wrist. The Olympus was not the only thing he picked from the ground. He also picked up the arrows left behind by the panther, who was called the cat by his people. "You can come down," Michael said to Thilv and Taskin. After wearing the Olympus, Michael just raised his hand as the black sword that slipped off his hand flew straight back to his hand. "Now that was one of the many people I have to kill back on my world," Michael said to the wood elves with a calm smile. Chapter 839 Crafting Crossbows for the Elves. By the time Michael returned to the tribe, the sun had almost fallen into the horizon. He leaped from the ground to comfortably land on the wooden platform above the ground. "My lord," Kirat and the other wood elves bowed toward Michael. After nodding at them, Michael strolled to his throne and saw Vidora lying on it belly up. The throne was littered with bits and pieces of fruits and bare bones of fish. Iag snored as a trail of drool trickled down her mouth. Michael lifted them up from the throne and raised his hand as a gust of wind blew past the throne. The wind blast cleaned his throne. Michael plunged onto the throne and took out the coin he picked from the panther. He fiddled with the coin until Iag, Sarba, and Cain slowly opened their eyes. Saba rubbed the sleep off of his eyes. When their visions cleared, They saw the dark lines on Michael's forehead. It was obvious he had met some trouble while they were feasting and living like a god. "What is that?" Ayag asked, looking at the coin in his hand. Saba turned his gaze. He saw a strange glow coming from within the coin. "Do you remember the beast man who tried to capture Gaia on Zanala's behalf?" Michael asked Vidora. "What of him? Don't tell me he's alive somehow." Ayag frowned. "Someone in his tribe followed me here." "This coin belongs to him," said Michael. Sarba's jaw dropped slightly. They all pushed their questions and doubts to the corner of their minds and asked Michael what had happened. Michael told them everything, starting from the invisible guard he saw near Tanulia to the powerful vortex that appeared to save the panther. The panther's disappearance left Michael with more questions than answers. He knew the Sky Hall built a portal to reach Itnes somehow, but it was no portal that saved the panther. Someone created the vortex, and they didn't want Michael to have the coins. The Dark Lord said killing monsters in the demon's grave would make some asshole stronger. "I wonder if that asshole is the same one who created the vortex." "It seems like he has control over the demon's grave," said Kane. As usual, Kane and Michael shared the same thought. But what Michael didn't know was that the asshole was another god of time and space, Andor. In his previous life, Andor was his arch-nemesis. At that time, Michael was the only god who was able to stop Andor, but the price Michael paid to defeat Andor was a little too much. Before resetting the universe, the Dark Lord ensured Andor wouldn't hurt his new self since he would be at his weakest. He placed an array above the mortal realm, preventing Andor from returning home and bringing the other gods to the mortal world. If Andor ever wanted to get back, he needed Michael. "We need to get more answers before we leave this world," said Michael. "Speaking of answers, we heard the wood elves climb the mother tree to get the Dark Lord's blessings. We also heard those who successfully climbed to the top heard the voice of the Dark Lord. What if he had left another recording for you at the top? It might help us shed some light on things," said Ayag. She sounded surprisingly intelligent. Michael almost wondered whether the fruits she devoured had some influence on her brain cells. Because normally, Ayag preferred to attack the problem than think about it. "They would be worried if we depart now. Let's head out there tomorrow. According to the elves, the mother tree is on the way to the ash field. We should climb up there, see what's there and then head to the ash field," said Sarba. Michael rubbed his chin for a moment before agreeing to Sarba's suggestion. "Besides, we need to find a way to dress up these elves." "Some of the girls said the tribe loses at least 10 elves yearly to the winter," Sarba said with concern for the elves. Michael had been thinking about the clothing issue for some time. However, buying clothes for the elves from the system was out of the question because it not only cost quite a lot of badass points, but he had also taken a loan from the system. It left him with only one option. He had to buy clothes from his world and bring them here. But to do that, he needed a portal connecting Itnes and his castle, where he planned to build the portal. "I am a blacksmith and an alchemist, not a tailor. I cannot solve their problem until we find a way to travel back and forth." As they were discussing the clothing issue, Kirat and a few girls came carrying a wooden platter filled with various fruits, boiled fish, and what seemed to be roots. "My lord, please accept this," Kirat bowed. "Thank you." Michael took the platter from Kirat and thanked them, which stunned the elves. "Have everyone eaten yet?" Michael asked Kirat. The warmth the elves felt from his words could not be described with mere words. Their hearts were filled with such joy and delight. "We will eat later on, my lord," said Kirat, controlling his tears from escaping his eyes. "Sylvia here told us they haven't had meat in months." Ayag looked at the brown-haired elf and said. The elven girl trembled. "Lady Ayag," the girl scowled as Ayag let out a devilish grin. "Is it true, Kirat? Don't you guys go hunting?" Kirat sighed before answering Michael. "We used to, my lord. But we lost our entire hunter group to the demons. Without them, hunting for the meat has become too dangerous." After hearing Kirat, Michael placed the silver platter on the throne's hand and stood up. "Tonight, we are having meat. I am going hunting, and there will be no negotiation. Did I hear the word meat?" "Yee, I meat." The children immediately became delighted to hear Michael. Many gasped and bounced in joy, especially children who hadn't had meat for months. The one who grinned the widest was Ayag. Unlike the elves, Ayag didn't go without meat for months but just a week. However, in her mind, a week was just as long as a couple of years. Michael gathered up the men in the time, including Tazkin. Soon, All the male elves in the tribe gathered around Michael. "Kirat, where do you get your bows?" Michael asked the old elf. "We make our own, my lord," said Kirat. "Before we go hunting, I want you to bring all the planks and wood logs you used to craft the bows." A couple of elves jumped down from their tribe and headed outside to bring everything Michael needed. The elves were curious to see why Michael suddenly asked for logs and planks. A few minutes later, the elves returned carrying wooden planks and logs that had a rosy tint to the wood. In addition, they also brought rolls of rope they used to make strings. After they placed the planks and logs before Michael, he gestured at the elves to take a few steps back. Then, he unsheathed the dark swords and started to carve the wood. The gears in Michael's inventor side of the brain worked at full capacity. Every move Michael made had a certain grace to it. He often entered the system and brought a few additional parts for the thing he was building. Under the elves' curious gazes, Michael effortlessly built not 1 but 5 crossbows. It had been some time since he put his inventor skill to good use. Now that he had a forge in the blacksmith trade, he would be able to build more powerful weapons. Underwater torpedo for Big Bertha was just an example. Michael was able to build these beautiful recurve crossbows with the common materials found in Itanies. He decorated the limbs with ebony details and ended in rounded curves ornamented with wrapped leather. The stock was wrapped in glistening blue leaves commonly found in the forest. Since Michael felt generous, he crafted a long quiver for every crossbow using deer hide. He decorated the outside with animal horns. In the hands of any archer, this bow was capable of firing arrows up to 70 meters while still retaining lethal power. "What is this, my lord?" Taskin asked Michael. "Watch." Michael raised the crossbow, knocked an arrow into the barrel, and aimed at a tree almost 20 meters away from them. "Move aside." Iag flew through the crowd and pushed them aside from the bolt's trajectory. When the elves cleared out from his path, Michael pulled the trigger. Whoosh! As soon as Michael pulled the trigger, the bolt shot out of the crossbow, creating an acute swish. The bolt soared through the air and hit the tree Michael aimed in a blink of an eye. It penetrated deep into the bark and jerked for a moment. Considering Taskin and most of the wood elves were skilled archers, they were speechless to see the speed and the power of the crossbow. "You can fire a bolt up to 70 meters. I built it in a way you do not have to worry about wind direction. Just aim and fire." Michael demonstrated how to reload the crossbow and fired another bolt farther than the previous one. When he first arrived at his new world from the earth, he had a hard time hitting the targets using a bow and arrows. Of course, he could hit the targets in close range, but the cultivators used arch energy to hit targets beyond what a normal human being could hit. Thanks to Gaia and practice, he became a deadly marksman. He still had a long way to go to reach Gaia's level. She was a frickin' beast when it came to long-ranged combat. One time, he saw Gaia hit a drone flying through dark clouds in a storm from 500 meters away. He doubted he could reach her level without the system's help. She was a natural-born marksman. Many elves gasped in shock, and then their eyes sparkled, hoping they would get one from Michael. "I will make more soon. For now, I'll let Karat decide who gets one," said Michael. Chapter 840 Death of Vidora. The next day, Michael prepared to head for the ash field. When Michael returned to the tribe from meditating on the hilltop he first arrived at, he saw the wood elves snoring loudly and sleeping like babies. Last night, they feasted on all kinds of meat after Michael and Taskin brought enough meat to serve them all. Michael himself barbecued the meat and served his devotees. He enjoyed taking a break from all the pressure of being the Dark Lord and enjoyed the feast with the wood elves. The meat from the game in Itanies tasted way better than the game back in his world. Apparently, the deer-like animal with a glowing belly infested the forest and grazed the vegetation without control. Their natural predators ran deeper into the forest, and many fell victim to the red forest and were eaten by the lizard-like beast. If he hunted them down, he would be doing a favor to the forest and the wood elves. He did plan to hunt them down after he opened up Hades again using another name. "Wake up!" Michael landed beside his throne to see Iag drooling on his throne. He tapped all 3 heads and woke them up. "Juicy meat. Want more?" Iag mumbled for a moment before falling back to deep slumber. She reminded Michael of Gaia as he smiled. Michael lost count of the times he had to carry her to the bed from the top of the mountain. They trained often. Waking up Gaia without getting his face bruised was the toughest challenge he faced every day. The first few times she anciently punched him in the face, she woke up and apologized. But later on, she would just laugh and say he deserved it for waking her up early. Now Iag acted just like her, minus the getting punched in the face. My lord, Kirot strolled toward Michael, navigating through the sleeping wood elves. Instead of returning to their homes, all the elves fell asleep on the spacious wooden platform. This village was an architectural marvel. They managed to build numerous wooden homes, bridges, lift systems, and a large wood platform in the center anchored to several trees. Every time he saw the village, he remembered the dark elven village. They almost looked the same, but the magical forest and the wood elves' kindness added charm and beauty to this village. I should wake these good-for-nothing elves, Kirot scowled. He felt offended to see them sleeping while their god was long awake. It's okay. Let them sleep. I know how it feels to sleep without worry in the world. I almost miss that feeling, Michael said while keeping a straight face. Where is the breakfast? Ayag asked, yawning. Her jaw opened wide, making Michael worried that it would get stuck. You are not in the castle, said Michael as Ayag rubbed the sleep off her eyes. She heaved a sigh of disappointment when the realization hit her. I should fetch you something to eat right this instant, Lady Ayag. No, Michael stopped Kirot with a wave of his hand. I'll get them something on the way to the mother tree, said Michael. He avoided telling Kirot the full truth that he was on his way to the ash field. To the wood elves, the ash field was a forbidden land. No one alive in the tribe had visited or even seen the place. According to Taskin, the ash field was far north of the mother tree and relatively closer to some orc tribes. He didn't think the orcs would step onto the ash field or anyone for that matter. Simply put, Michael learned nothing about the ash field from the elves, and it seemed like no one knew about the place, which made Michael more curious. I'll be back when I can, said Michael before slowly ascending into the air. We will wait for your arrival, my lord. Kirot bowed as Michael shot through the canopy and disappeared from Kirot's sight. After leaving the tribe, Michael cast the lightning dash. Kirot vaguely saw a streak of black lightning in the sky, and stared at the sky until the lightning faded away. In the sky, Michael was on his way to the mother tree at full speed. Vidora wrapped their tail tightly around Michael's neck and tried not to fall down. Everything around them seemed blurry due to Michael's speed. When things cleared up, they reached the mother tree. Even when Michael was way higher from the ground, the top of the tree seemed far away. The tree spanned as far as one could see. A sparkling canopy overshadowed the blue sky itself. It would take a couple of the tallest buildings on Earth to be stacked on top of each other to reach the mother tree's height. Michael wanted to see the tree at night, where it would radiate like a giant neon tube light. How did Taskin climb to the top, and how the hell does anyone climb to the top? Ayag's neck ached just by looking up at the tree. The mere thought of climbing the tree without using energy seemed absurd to her. Resilience, said Michael. You can do almost anything if you put your mind to it. Michael slowly hovered toward the tree while noticing the empty castle ground and campsite around the mother tree. As Michael expected, the old woman kept her word. The Sky Hall soldiers finally vacated the once the holy ground of the wood elves. We should take over the castle, Ayag suggested after looking at the empty castle. However, Michael firmly shook his head. No. This place used to be holy, and I will keep it that way. The moment we build a portal connecting this world to ours, I am razing everything the Sky Hall made to the ground. For now, Michael didn't want to start a wildfire that would engulf everything, including the mother tree itself. Besides, there might be something inside the castle he could use against the Sky Hall. Even though Michael doubted the old woman would have left something. She didn't seem like someone who would make such a careless mistake. Michael increased his speed to reach the top faster but didn't fly at his full speed because he didn't want to miss any clues. As he was flying toward the top of the tree, Michael noticed several birds with strange designs on their body and colorful eyes that glowed like jewels. He had never seen such exotic birds before. They all scattered away and flew into the holes in the mother tree's branches as wide as a typical big tree. The tree was home to unknown species and had its own unique ecosystem. His love for Itanes surged to the point he realized why the past Dark Lord had taken such interest in Itanes. What Michi didn't know was the past Dark Lord did not only simply take an interest in this world but protected the world from Andor and his schemings. He had to kill someone he cared dearly to save this world from getting destroyed. Almost after 30 minutes, Michael reached the top, where 11 branches branched out from the center that looked like an elegant garden. These branches looked like pillars that held the canopy on their backs. Michael felt a pleasant chill on his feet when he landed on the grass field. Birds chirped in the distance as Michael strolled towards something that looked man-made. To be precise, it was a giant stone pillar entangled by veins and moths. It didn't feel like he was on top of a tree. Instead, it felt like he was walking in a hall made of Mother Nature herself. Everything around him was untouched by death and destruction caused by the Sky Hall. He didn't think the Sky Hall soldiers ever managed to reach this place. They would have if they could use arch energy. Thank the gods they couldn't. Otherwise, the Sky Hall soldiers would have hunted down the bright blue feathered birds watching him just for their feathers. Michael's full focus was on the stone pillar. The closer he got to the pillar, the more he felt a strange energy coming from it. When Michael reached the almost 7 feet tall pillar, he grabbed the veins coiling around and pulled them apart. It took him a few seconds to completely get rid of the veins. Finally, Michael was able to see the stone pillar clearly. What he saw engraved in the stone pillar rendered him speechless. His heart almost skipped a beat. For a brief moment, Michael's mind just went blank. The reason for Michael's complete shock was the engraving of a man with 2 swords fighting a 3-headed hydra hundreds of times the size of him. That was only a part of the mural. Below that, they saw the fallen hydra and the man kneeling before its body, presumably exhausted after a battle. It can't be real. It's not. It must be Mugashuku, Ayag muttered as Kane slowly shook his head. Mugashuku is a 4-headed hydra. That would be us unless there was another 3-headed hydra in existence, said Kane. Then that's not Ghost. It must be someone else. Ayag's eyes watered. Look at the swords he was holding. Kane pointed at the swords. Although the swords seemed small, they could see the 3 dragons in the hilt, looking exactly the same as Michael's dark swords. Michael had no words as he was in utter shock. If the mural was something that happened in the past, to be precise, happened to the past Dark Lord, it meant the past Dark Lord fought and killed Vidora. But why? That was the question that drilled his brain to the core. He knew the past Dark Lord's life was kind of fucked up, yet Michael never imagined it would be fucked to the point he had to fight and kill Vidora. Vidora was family to him. There must be more to this, Saba stuttered. He would never hurt Ghost, and he knew his siblings wouldn't too. We don't have to freak out. I said this is Ghost, but I didn't say it's our Ghost. Kane's words somehow managed to calm down Ayag and Sarba. But what happened between us that made us fight to the death? Asked Sarba. Chapter 841 by Ning's Fear. Please be careful. Inside a cozy room draped with sky blue curtains, the old woman Michael met at the castle talked to a girl in a mirror. The girl's figure slowly faded out of existence after the old woman waved her hand. After the girl's figure vanished, the mirror reflected the old woman's figure. The girl who just disappeared was none other than Rowena Winsitten, the Holy Maiden, and the old woman Michael met was her maid, Bai Ning. Despite how frail the old woman looked with her wrinkly skin and hunched back, she was an immortal at level 10. However, she suppressed her cultivation stage to make herself look like a fusion stage warrior to most of the Sky Hall soldiers. At that moment, Bai Ning resided in a quickly built cabin in an ash field. She was tasked to supervise the dig site where they were supposed to find something that could rival the Dark Lord himself in a battle. Do not come back without results, Bai Ning. Bai Ning heard a thunderous voice in her head. She immediately dropped to her knees when she heard the voice. Almost instantly, sweat beads formed on her face, and she remained on her knees for a few long moments. She had only feared 3 people in her life: the Holy Maiden, the Dark Lord, and this mysterious Lord of the Sky Hall. Bai Ning didn't fear the first 2 as much as she feared the latter because Rowena and the Dark Lord were still weak compared to her. The same could not be said of the mysterious Lord. He could end her and the entire Sky Hall with a snap of his fingers. Even the great elders of the Sky Hall feared him. Luckily for most others, they didn't know such a person existed. Many thought, including the Holy Maiden herself, that Holy Maiden was the highest rank. However, the truth was that there existed someone above the Holy Maiden. The most powerful great elders served him and feared him more than they did the Holy Maiden. Deep down, Bai Ning didn't want to see this mysterious lord in person. Instead, she was quite happy serving him from the shadows. Bai Ning hoped that the Holy Maiden would bend her knees to this mysterious lord when the time came, though Bai Ning didn't think that would happen, judging by Rowena's temperament. Even after the voice's effect on her faded, Bai Ning couldn't get back to her feet. Eventually, she managed to muster enough strength to stand up and leave the cabin. Bai Ning heaved a sigh as she strolled toward the wooden door and twisted the golden knob. As soon as the door opened, she was welcomed by an alarming sight. Lightning struck close to her and all around the place again and again. The sky roared as an eternal thunderstorm dominated this realm. Strange sounds erupted from behind Bai Ning, perhaps 2 beings fighting each other or a collapsing landscape. In spite of the treacherous landscape, She got the feeling she was not in immediate danger. This place was no walk in the park, but at the very least, she should be able to survive for a couple of weeks. The men she brought from Sky Hall and those who occupied the mother tree were doing typical labor such as carrying crates, erupting tents to survive the thunderstorm, and digging holes everywhere as though they were searching for something. It was tough for Bai Ning to see through the ashen air. The entire place had an eerie crimson-red hue to it. Bai Ning decided to go out there and look at how the digging process was going in person. Cupping the mother tree was just a secondary task. Their main task was to dig up something that the mysterious lord ordered the great elders to do. With the equipment coming from Sky Hall and extra manpower, Bai Ning believed they could find whatever was hiding in the ash field. You have 3 weeks. Bai Ning's mind replayed the words spoken to her by the mysterious lord. Initially, when they first arrived at Itani's 2 months ago, she had no worries or pressure. The mysterious lord rarely bothered to speak to her. But imagine her surprise when the Dark Lord himself came to pay her a visit. Then, all hell broke loose. Something inside the mysterious lord broke after he heard the Dark Lord's name. Bai Ning lived long enough to tell when someone was feeling overwhelming killing intent. She didn't know the history between the Dark Lord and the mysterious lord, but one thing was certain, the mysterious lord had deep hatred toward the Dark Lord. Curse you to hell, Dark Lord. Bai Ning cursed Michael under her breath and went to meet the captain of this unit. A few meters away from her, a group of silver-armored soldiers was digging the ground using shovels, while another group was carrying an unconscious soldier toward one of the tents. Lady Bai Ning. The elven captain noticed Bai Ning and dropped his shovel. Captain Fenian, how's the digging going? Asked Bai Ning. Because of the thunderstorm and the howling wind, they had to speak louder than they were used to. We are losing more and more soldiers, Lady Bai Ning. The air is getting more and more toxic the more we dig, Lady Bai Ning. I'd suggest we bring more equipment and wait till our scholars find a way to filter the air, said Fenian. But Bai Ning firmly shook her head. Not an option, Captain. The order came from the top. If we don't show results to the higher-ups in 2 weeks, it'd be our heads that roll on the table. Bai Ning didn't give a damn about the soldiers. As far as she was concerned, they were all expendable. At this rate, we won't have enough men to dig, Lady Bai Ning. We have already lost half of our men to the Dark Lord, and many of the survivors fell sick to the toxic air. Fenian raised his voice. Unlike Bai Ning, he cared about his men. Dying came up with being a soldier, but Fenian preferred dying with honor on the battlefield to digging for something. Have they taken the purification pills? Asked Bai Ning. They have, Lady Bai Ning. But the pills seem to lose their effect when they dig deeper into the ground. Maybe we tell the Holy Maiden about this. No. Bai Ning didn't realize she had raised her voice to the point it sounded louder than thunderclaps. The soldiers stopped what they were doing and turned their gazes to Bai Ning. Back to work. Bai Ning ordered the gazing soldiers as they quickly returned to their work. Captain Fenian. You ought to tell the Holy Maiden about this under no circumstances. She hasn't ascended to the throne of the Holy Maiden yet. If she knew of this and caused a ruckus among the elders, her ascension would be hindered. I don't think I have to explain the politics in Sky Hall. Fenian creased his sword-like brows. As much as he hated hiding things from the Holy Maiden, Lady Bai Ning's words made sense to him. Besides, he knew Lady Bai Ning cared about the Holy Maiden more than anyone in the Sky Hall. If she thought telling the Holy Maiden about the ash field was not a good idea, Fenian had to obey her order. The only thing that worried Fenian was the lives of his men. Many thought the Sky Hall was a single entity and functioned as one. But it was only half the truth. The reality was that Sky Hall was politically scattered into various groups inside. For instance, some believed in and served the Holy Maiden wholeheartedly, like Fenian, while some wanted to change the hierarchy and form a circle of elders. Another group consisted of the most powerful elders who knew about the mysterious lord's existence, and they served him, only him. I know losing your men hurts, Captain. But if we don't do this, we will lose way more to the Dark Lord. You saw what he did to those poor souls. Bai Ning sympathized with Fenian while low-key manipulating him using the Dark Lord. Fenian sighed as he looked around at his men for a moment. He could only feel pity for the men who were digging down as they were ordered without having any idea they were about to die. Rather, even if they knew they would die, they wouldn't disobey their orders. It'd be helpful and even reduce the number of casualties if we knew what we are looking for here. Lady Bai Ning. Hearing his words, Bai Ning could only sigh. You'd be the first one to know when or if they tell me, Captain. Also, I have another task for you. What is it?
asked Fenian. I want you to go to the human tribes in this world and gather as much information as you can about them. I need to know their lifestyle, who or what they worship, and how many people are in their tribe. Bai Ning paused for a second and continued. The wood elves are lost cause. We have to stop more people from following the Dark Lord here. If we had natives of this world doing our work, the Dark Lord wouldn't have killed them as he killed our soldiers. He still has a soft spot for his own race, and we should exploit it if push comes to shove. When should I leave? Fenian asked Bai Ning. He knew he would be more useful in collecting information that could give them an advantage over the Dark Lord than digging holes and looking at his soldiers fall one by one. Subconsciously, Fenian didn't want to be here and deal with the guilt. No time like the present, Captain. What if the Dark Lord breaks the deal and comes here, Lady Bai Ning? Bai Ning chuckled. He won't break the deal, but he will come here to see what we are up to. In fact, I'd say he's on his way as we speak. You go and get ready to leave, Captain. Ill deal with the Dark Lord. Chapter 842 World-Ending Monster. Bai Ning supervised the digging after Captain Fenian left the ash field to gather information on the humans in Itnes. As time passed, more and more people fell sick to the toxicity in the air. Even the soldiers at the fusion stage collapsed like a lump of coal. After seeing almost 15 soldiers fall to their death, Bai Ning wondered what the hell she was ordered to dig up. As much as she liked to know the answer, she could not contact the Great Elders or the mysterious Lord. Only they contacted her, not the other way around. Lady Bai Ning. The old woman heard an elated shout from a few meters away. She quickened her steps as a group of soldiers gathered around a crater they had dug. They found something, the silver-armored soldier sitting on the edge said, bowing his head toward her. Bai Ning approached the edge and looked down. Some of the soldiers were lying in the red sand unconscious as the remaining soldiers slowly dug something up. Bring that to me, Bai Ning raised her voice. The soldiers carried something gray and heavy. From her point of view, the object had no distinguishable shape. It took 5 soldiers to carry the object to Bai Ning. The soldiers groaned and panted heavily. A couple of soldiers from above ran downhill to help the soldiers carry the object upwards. Finally, the soldiers managed to bring the object upside and placed it before Bai Ning. The old woman squatted beside the object. Thud. Some of the soldiers who carried the object to them fell down and rolled down the crater. However, Bai Ning didn't give a damn about them. Her full focus was on the object before her. What is it? Bai Ning mumbled under her breath. She slowly ran her fingers through the object. Because it was under the ground for so long, its surface was blanketed with a thick layer of dirt. She rubbed off the dirt as much as she could. The soldiers helped her with brushes and tiny tools they used to remove the dirt. Then, the object started to take the shape of a triangle. The bottom of the object had cracks, and seemed like a part of it was missing. Judging by the smoothness and the shape, Bai Ning had a feeling that this might be a broken tooth. Lady Bai Ning. As she was pondering about the object, she heard another shout. This time, a group of soldiers carried a 6-feet-long pillar toward Bai Ning. They placed the pillar with a heavy thud. To Bai Ning's surprise, the pillar and the object on the ground seemed to have been made of the same material. Bai Ning looked up as she saw the pointy end of the pillar and felt a chill running down her spine. It is a tooth, Bai Ning muttered. The pointy end, the shape, and the cracks on the surface, everything pointed to one thing: a tooth. She wouldn't have come to this conclusion if she hadn't seen dragons in real life. But the tooth was too big to be a dragon's unless the dragon was almost 200 meters tall. There was no mention of a 200-meter dragon in any texts, and according to her knowledge, a dragon could not grow to that size. It was biologically impossible. Bai Ning's jaw dropped a few inches as she looked around the ash field, shocked to the core. At the moment, the biggest creature alive was Mugashiku, aka the dormant hydra in the southern continent. As far as Bai Ning could tell, the tooth belonged to an ancient beast bigger than Mugashiku. We are standing in the graveyard of an ancient beast, Bai Ning mumbled. Her mind cancelled out all the sounds around her. The eerie silence rooted strongly into her heart as fear crept down her spine slowly. If the tooth alone was 6 feet tall, she could only imagine how monstrous the beast would have been in real life. Take this to my tent and keep digging, Bai Ning snapped back to reality after briefly being in shock. Then, she took her gaze from the tooth to the soldiers around her. Scatter the demon caskets you have dug out, Bai Ning ordered the soldiers. Her tone contained a sense of urgency. Yes, Lady Bai Ning. The soldiers quickly nodded and carried the tooth to Bai Ning's tent. Meanwhile,
The rest hurried toward the largest tent on the field to take out the demon caskets they stored there. Even on their way to the tent, some soldiers fell unconscious. While the soldier who was carrying the tooth to Bai Ning's tent wobbled as their legs felt weak. The radiation coming from the tooth was too much for the soldiers to handle. If she wasn't an immortal, she might have lost consciousness to the radiation. Ba Ning watched the soldiers carry out their words despite their comrades falling down like flies. Their loyalty and devotion toward the Sky Hall were truly remarkable. She had lived for centuries, and every generation of soldiers had the same devotion toward Sky Hall. They could only defeat the looming threat, the Dark Lord, with firm devotion and undying loyalty. Otherwise, the Dark Lord would corrupt their soldiers and turn those soldiers against them. Do not underestimate him, Bai Ning recalled the great elder's words. They were stronger than the Dark Lord, yet they avoided fighting with him. Instead, they believed the mysterious Lord's words. He wanted no one except Noah to fight the Dark Lord. Even an immortal like her shuddered when she saw him up close. When she was talking to the Dark Lord, she felt like staring at death itself. The darkness in his eyes tested her will to speak a word against him. Reading texts about the Dark Lord and witnessing his atrocities in person was as different as the sky and earth. Just thinking about him made her shudder, especially after learning what was beneath them. No matter what, she could not let the Dark Lord know the secrets of the ash field. While Bai Ning and the Sky Hall soldiers were trying to dig up the ancient beast, Michael was on his way to Ash Field at full speed. However, instead of flying in the sky, he flew through the forest to hide the trail of black lightning. He didn't want the old woman or anyone to notice him. On the way, Vidora was annoyingly silent. After seeing the mural in the pillar, they became silent, especially Iag and Sarba. Cain, on the other hand, believed they could change the past and avoid fighting each other. The creatures and birds roaming in the forest scattered away as they felt a strong gust of wind blowing past them. Michael followed the sound of thunderstorms and the red sky in the distance to reach the ash field. Apparently, the ash field's eerie weather turned the ground and sky red, as well as created everlasting thunderstorms. They were disappointed the mother tree had no answers to their questions but only the stone pillar. Michael didn't hear any voices or recordings of the past Dark Lord. Not everything was laid clearly for Michael by the past Dark Lord, in other words, himself. To be honest, Michael had no problem with that. Of course, it was shocking to the core that the past Dark Lord fought Vidora and killed them, but Michael believed there was more to the story than the mural told them. There must be a reason why Vidora turned against him. Eventually, the trees around him lessened in number. It felt less cluttered and more spacious. Soon, the forest opened up to an entirely new biome. From a bird's view, a straight line divided the sparkling blue forest and the red sandy place with violent thunderstorms. The sky looked like someone painted it with blood and smeared the painting with clusters of black clouds. Michael had a tough time looking through the thunderstorm. The storm lifted the red sand and started the sandstorm. Luckily, it also helped Michael blend in with the surroundings. Just like he was having difficulty locating the Sky Hall soldiers, they would have the same difficulty locating him. Thanks to the thermal vision, he was able to locate the soldiers. As soon as he turned on the thermal vision, he saw several yellowish figures with glowing redness in the center running around. They seemed to be digging the ground despite the storm. In addition, Michael also vaguely noticed some tents and tried to locate the old woman among them. However, she was nowhere to be found, at least in his vision. Michael slowly ascended into the air to better view the place. Hovering in the air, Michael took out a few drones and willed them to fly through the storm. Bang! Surprisingly, the drones exploded into pieces in a few moments. Cain creased his brows. There is some kind of energy shield around the place. Finally, Saba broke his silence and informed Michael about the strange energy dorm he sees around the place. I don't see any shields, said Iag. Let's wait here and watch what's happening, Michael said. He didn't plan to go through the shield or break it altogether, which might alert whoever placed the energy shield in the first place. Michael flew around the dome with Sarba's help. As he was hovering around, he saw more demon caskets on the ground. The soldiers tirelessly unearthed them to God knows for what reason. But what lies in the ground avoided both Michael and Sarba's senses. Bai Ning and her soldiers had no idea what they were doing. As a matter of fact, only one being alive knew the origin of the ancient beast, Andor. This ancient beast was a large piece in his elaborate plan to exact revenge on the Dark Lord. Chapter 843 Andor's plan for Vidora in Andor's castle. The god of time and space was sitting on his throne alone as usual. Unlike any other day, Andor had a grin plastered on his face. The reason for his unusual smile was the thing covered in grey cloth. Whatever was hiding beneath the cloth took almost half of the throne hall. Andor would look tiny if he stood beside it. Looking at the cloth-covered object, Andor waved his hand as a 6-foot circular mirror appeared and hovered in the air before him. Something created a few ripples in the mirror as though the glass had turned liquid. Andor's hands glowed as he extended his hand toward the mirror. A bright light slowly flew out of his hand and landed on the mirror. Typically, a mirror would have reflected the bright beam of light, but not this one. Instead of reflecting the light, the mirror absorbed the light. Soon, silhouettes appeared in the mirror. Gradually, the ripples in the mirror settled down, revealing the silhouette's figure. The figure in the mirror had an eerie aura around him. He was inhumanly tall and had a busta build. Since the figure's head was covered in tentacle-like appendages, it was hard to tell whether the figure was male or female. But gender rarely bothered this figure. Something about the figure's eyes portrayed death. If the creepy death aura wasn't enough, the figure's eyes were gray as ashes, and the body was covered in soot-black fur. The figure was the embodiment of death. Greetings, Andor, the god of time and space. What a pleasant surprise. The figure talked in a demonic voice. If death had a voice, it would sound like the figure. Unlike the figure's words suggested, there was no delight or joy in seeing Andor. Focrux, the god of necromancy, Andor greeted Focrux back, hiding the disgust in his eyes. 6,000 years ago, Andor would have killed himself than to ask for Focrux' help. Most of the gods treated Focrux and his brother with disdain, as they brought nothing but death and destruction everywhere. Unlike the rest of the pantheon, Focrux had fewer worshippers. No one in their right mind would worship the god of necromancy, which enabled mortals to reanimate the dead and spread plagues. Yet again, because of the Dark Lord, Andor was forced to do something he hated the most. In this case, Andor had to make a deal with Focrux. How is the mortal universe treating you, Andor? I heard mortals built countless temples to worship you. Focrux' words and tone oozed with sarcasm. Hearing such a lowly god mock him, Andor's blood boiled to the point his eyes turned red. But Andor took a deep breath to calm himself. Like it or not, Andor needed Focrux' help, and there was no point in fighting with him. I sense a powerful death aura around you, Andor. Is that why you summoned me, using the Stone of Hikar? Asked Focrux as Andor sighed. The Stone of Hikar was a powerful artifact used to summon a god from the mortal realm. Before the Dark Lord locked the mortal realm and prevented Andor from ascending to the god realm, contacting gods was as easy as snapping his fingers to Andor. As the god of time and space, Andor didn't have any need for artifacts to contact the gods in the god realm. Instead, he would just open up a portal and meet them in person. But now, Andor had to use the Stone of Hikar to summon Focrux. Unfortunately, he had to wait another 100 years to use the Stone of Hikar again. Andor hoped summoning Focrux was worth using the stone. If anyone could help him with the object he found, it was Focrux. Andor could see Focrux' eyes glistening with excitement. You are right to sense the death aura. Look what I found, Andor said, rising from his throne. Then, he climbed down the stairs as the mirror followed him behind. Andor reached the object and pulled down the cloth covering the object. After the cloth fell down, Focrux saw a colossal head of a hydra. The mirror had to fly back to capture the entire head. Even after 5,000 years, the silver scales still glistened in the light. That's the Dark Lord's hydra, Focrux stuttered. He was completely stunned by the head. 5,000 years ago, the entire realm of gods felt the effects of the battle between Andor and the Dark Lord. Even some of the powerful gods had to leave their dimensions and intervene in the battle, not to save or fight for Andor but to prevent the realm of gods from getting obliterated by the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord and his pet Hydra terrorized the realm and almost succeeded in killing a fellow god. Thousands of divine beings lost their lives as collateral damage, and the damage to the realm still had remnants of their battle. No one thought a Hydra could become powerful enough to rival the most powerful gods, and for hundreds of years, everyone thought the Hydra was unstoppable until fate played a cruel trick upon the Dark Lord and the Hydra. Something happened between the two that resulted in them fighting to the death. Only a few gods knew the real reason why they fought each other, and Focrux was not one of them. The battle between the Hydra and the Dark Lord lasted for 2 long weeks. It was Andor who managed to teleport both of them to a separate dimension before they destroyed the mortal realm entirely. The gods had never witnessed such an intense battle between a god and a beast. At the end of their battle, the Dark Lord slew the Hydra and emerged as the victor. Focrux was fortunate enough to witness the death of a terrifying existence. He watched the light of life leave the Hydra's eyes, and tears roll out from the Dark Lord's eyes. Vidora! Andor raised his voice as he burst into laughter. The Dark Lord's pet, Andor's words echoed throughout the majestic throne hall. He thought resetting the mortal universe would erase his mistakes. Humph, Andor snickered. On the other hand, Focrux narrowed his eyes. When it came to the Dark Lord, the entire god realm took a step back and analyzed everything. Every time they thought they outsmarted him, he pulled a surprise on them and made them pay. Hence, Focrux couldn't be as excited as Andor. Are you sure whatever you're planning to do with this is a smart move? Asked Focrux. Andor's laugh faded away as he turned around. Do you think I am making a mistake? Andor creased his brows. Focrux slowly shook his head. I am saying the Dark Lord doesn't make mistakes. How do you know that he didn't know Vidora's body would be spared from the array? Focrux asked Andor. After the Dark Lord used the time array and locked the mortal realm, preventing the gods from entering it, many gods in the pantheon tried to break the array. However, they all failed and gave up. The only way to break the array was from within the mortal realm. In other words, only Andor could break the Dark Lord's array and let the gods enter the mortal realm once again as they were used to. Ha 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 ha, Andor chuckled. If he didn't make any mistakes, why did he use the time array to reset the entire universe? I can agree that he doesn't make little mistakes, but instead, he made a gigantic one, and you are looking at it, said Andor. I am going to wake up to his worst nightmare. The last time they fought, this Hydra almost killed him. This time, I will make sure it doesn't fail, Andor patted the Hydra head. I assume that's where I come in. Andor nodded as Focrux rubbed his clean-shaven chin for a brief moment. What's in it for me? If I want to help you take down the most insane and powerful god, you have to make it worth the risk. After all, we both know how far he would go to take down those who wronged him. Focrux started the negotiation like a sly fox. Being a god didn't mean they all would be benevolent and merciful. Some of the gods made even the worst mortals look like magnanimous beings. There was a reason why the Dark Lord slew some of the gods and willed to wage war against the pantheon itself. He hated most of the gods to the core, and some gods would say he had all the right to hate them after what they did to him. The pantheon still believed some gods helped the Dark Lord achieve the things he did, but they found no traitors among them. Focrux's words didn't surprise Andor at all. In fact, he expected the god of necromancy to ask something in return. You get to take the body of whoever falls in the battle. Hydra or the Dark Lord himself, you'll get to play with their bodies. Focrux's eyes sparkled as he almost drooled. But the thought of the Dark Lord surviving the battle and coming after him made his body tremble in fear. But if the Dark Lord survived somehow, he won't know you were involved. I know the drill. It's surprising how the gods have fallen. We used to fear no one, Andor snickered. Lots of things have changed, Andor. The realm of gods isn't what it used to be. You will know if you manage to break the Dark Lord's array, said Focrux. Are you going to help me or not? Andor's voice turned grave and serious. For a few moments, Focrux didn't give Andor any answer. Then, he took a deep breath and nodded. I will help you reanimate the Hydra. But you need to find the entire body without missing a part. Also, as you know, I won't be able to use my power from here. So I will instruct you to conduct a ritual that mimics my powers and get what you want. It will take time though. Trust me, I can be very patient. Andor let out a murderous grin and turned his gaze back to the Hydra head. Chapter 844. Leaving the demon's grave in the ash field, Michael watched the Sky Hall soldiers dig up more and more caskets from the ground. Unfortunately, Vidora's body eluded his X-ray vision altogether. The body was far too deep in the ground. If Andor hadn't given Sky Hall the exact coordinates, they wouldn't have unearthed Vidora's body in a million years. He knew everything that happened to the past Dark Lord, so Andor was able to exploit his mistakes. Having no idea Vidora's adult body was in the ground, Michael patiently watched the Sky Hall dig up more caskets. He lingered above the dig site for almost an hour, and all the soldiers did was dig. I don't see a point hanging out here any longer, said Kane. Michael didn't wait for others to agree. Instead, he turned around and flew away from the place. After seeing the mural on top of the mother tree, Michael decided to leave Itany's and the demon's grave. Initially, He planned to spend a few more days helping the Wood Elves, but he changed his plans. He thrilled himself to achieve full speed, leaving a dark lightning streak in the sky. Vidora tightened their tail around Michael's neck as they never experienced such high speed. It took them 2 hours to reach the ash field from the mother tree earlier. However, the return trip only took 45 minutes. When Michael pushed himself to the brink, several tiny lightning bolts appeared and crackled around his body. To Vidora's surprise, Michael didn't go to the tribe but came to the mother tree. He landed right before the stone pillar, creating a shock wave around the tree. "Why are we back here?" asked Saga. Boom! Michael punched the stone pillar as it exploded into bits and pieces. All it took was one punch for Michael to erase his past self's mistakes. Honestly, Michael didn't think the past Dark Lord had made a mistake by killing Vidora. Although Michael didn't know the reason, he knew how hard it would have been for the past Dark Lord to kill Vidora. But no matter what, he wouldn't let history repeat itself, and he broke the pillar as a gesture of his promise to Vidora. "Our past is meant to guide us, not define us. We must not give out past the power to dictate our future." Michael looked at his shoulder where Vidora was looking at the pebbles on the ground and said. They slowly flapped their wings to see Michael in the eyes. "He is right," started Saga. "The past Dark Lord left this behind because he wanted us to see it and change our future. That's what I've been trying to tell you both." Kane rolled his eyes. Usually, Kane remained silent until his response was absolutely needed. However, when his siblings tried to grow a hatred toward Ghost, he immediately came out of his shell and tried to talk some sense into them. Saga and Kane turned their gazes toward Iag. "I am not mad at Ghost, idiots. I am just confused why they fought each other to death," said Iag. "Whatever the reason might have been, we do not need to dwell on it," said Michael. "Can we just stay here for a moment before we go back to the tribe?" Saga looked worried as Michael nodded and went to the mother's tree's edge. He sat down and put Vidora beside him. The two of them looked at the magical world before them in peace. As they drowned themselves in the beautiful sight, Vidora slowly approached Michael and jumped on his lap. Then, the three heads snuggled against Michael's stomach and tried to embrace him with their small wings. "You are family, Ghost. We would never hurt you, and we know you wouldn't too." Iag's eyes became watery as Michael rubbed their back gently. Michael was about to open his mouth when he saw the silhouette of the past Dark Lord in the sky. It only lasted in the sky for a mere moment, and Michael could swear he saw the past Dark Lord smile at them before disappearing. At that moment, Michael felt something changing inside him, like something heavy had been lifted off of him. The more Michael learned about the past Dark Lord, the more he understood why he decided to reset the entire universe. At first, it felt a bit extreme to Michael, but he sympathized with him after learning about the dark parts of his life. If he had lost Gaia and been forced to kill Vidora for some reason, he would reset the universe too. He wouldn't let that happen no matter what. The two of them spent almost an hour on the mother tree before returning to the tribe. As usual, the wood elves greeted him with bright smiles and cooked meat since Taskin and the others could hunt efficiently using the crossbows. "I hope you had a pleasant journey, my lord," Kirat said as Michael sat on his throne. For a few moments, Michael didn't answer Kirat. "My lord," Kirat called Michael again. He looked drowned in his own thoughts to Kirat. "What did you say?" Michael asked, snapping back to reality. "Is everything all right, my lord?" asked Kirat. Thilv couldn't help overhearing Kirat and approached the two of them while Taskin was helping the other crossbow bearers perfect their aims. "It will be soon," said Michael. Then, with a flick of his wrist, Michael took out the copper ring and the silver coin he snatched from the panther. Like a magnet pulling the iron closer, the copper ring pulled the silver coin almost instantly. Ding! The silver coin hit the copper coin. Michael felt the copper ring frantically vibrate as the silver coin radiated a dim glow. Soon, the silver coin glowed as bright as a torch, making the wood elves around Michael close their eyes. Suddenly, the light shot straight above Michael and opened up a vortex in the air. Michael was surprised to see the coin open up a portal in a blink of an eye. He thought he would have to ask the system or do some work to activate the copper ring. But on the contrary, the copper ring opened up a portal using the coin. How the coin was able to open up a portal was still a mystery to Michael, but he was glad it did. Seeing the weird swirling hole in the air, the wood elves gasped. When the Dark Lord first appeared in their world, Kirat saw a portal just like this portal before. In fact, Kirat saw the Dark Lord fly through this portal. Hence, his heart sank when he saw another one appear above them. The old man knew their god was about to leave their world. Michael took a step forward and placed his hand on Karat's shoulder. I am not abandoning you all. I will be back soon. But my lord, can't you stay with us a bit longer? Thilv panicked as Taskin dropped what he was doing and came to stand beside his wife. My lord, is there something we can do to change your mind? Asked Taskin, only to see Michael shake his head. There is something I must do in my world. As I promised before, I will build a portal connecting this world to mine. I can't do that from here. The wood elves looked gloomy, and some even cried. However, they knew they couldn't change Michael's decision even though they wanted to. Can we come with you, my lord? Taskin stunned everyone with his question. As much as I like for all of you to come into my world, I cannot take anyone with me at this moment. Michael slowly shook his head. He stepped back and raised his head to see the swirling vortex. As his feet ascended from the floor, the wood elves dropped to their knees one by one. Many, including children, sobbed to see the Dark Lord leave their world. Please come back soon, my lord, Karat's voice stuttered. He was on the verge of crying out loud. Lady Iag, don't forget what you promised us. One of the elven girls purred as Iag nodded with a smile. I want. And you people better be safe and sound when we come back. Otherwise you will have hell to pay, Saba shouted as tears rolled out his eyes. But they were not tears of sadness. On the contrary, Saba was happy that they would be able to visit their world soon. Granted, both Vidora and Michael wanted to spend more time in Itnes as there was so much more to explore in the world, yet they had no choice. To Michael, his journey through the demon's grave and Itnois seemed cut short by an invisible force. Nonetheless, it was his choice to leave and build a portal back into the castle. Now that he had gathered everything he wanted from Itnes, the Dark Army's financial problem would soon be history. On the bright side, Michael couldn't wait to see Gaia and Nightmare and tell them everything that had transpired. When Michael was just a few inches away from the vortex, Michael took out a modified earpiece and mirror from the system storage. He had to convert all the 10 million gold coins into badass points to modify them. It was worth the price though. The earpiece and the tablet-sized mirror floated toward Karat. You can use them to contact me if there is an emergency. Michael emphasized the word emergency because he knew the wood elves would call him every day otherwise. We will meet you soon. These were Michael's words to them before he disappeared into the vortex. Meanwhile, Andor felt the vortex open in Itnes using the artifact he gave the Beastmen tribe a long time ago. The coin Michael used to create the vortex was made by none other than the god of time and space himself. So naturally, Andor felt it when Michael used the coin. Andor creased his dark brows sitting on the throne. So one of those idiots managed to lose one to my nemesis. Andor clenched his fist. This act of foolishness alone was enough for Andor to wipe out the Beastmen kingdom. Luckily for them, he had more pressing matters on hand, like reanimating Vidora's body slash. Chapter 845 Fourth Armor Piece. I don't care what the fuck you do, but I want him found yesterday. You understand? I am this close to murdering all the guardians I can find. Gaia stomped the ground. She stood in the surveillance room in the dark forest and contacted all the subordinates at the same time, except Saber and Adelia. If he is in the southern continent, I will find him, said Tiberius. My girls are doing everything they can, my lady, Sadie started, only to get interjected by Gaia. It's not enough. I want meet Ghost empty-handed. That fucker Noah destroyed both the prototype and the weapon. Even the blueprints are gone. So the only way to turn this into a win is to find the man behind this weapon. Gaia was not playing around. If the subordinates were to meet her in person, there would be casualties in the castle. She was pissed at everyone, including herself. Thanks to Noah and his team, she lost the prototype, weapon, and the man who built it. Like a cherry on top of a failure cake, Noah captured the orcs who survived the auction, including the leader, and brought them somewhere Gaia couldn't find. Even Lord Information didn't know anything about the orcs except they supposedly worked for the Beast King. What about the Guardian you flipped recently? If I heard you right, he is in Noah's elite unit. So how in the hell he has no idea about the inverter's location? Gaia creased her brows. Everyone went silent, expecting Sadie's answer. By turning a Guardian into their spy, Sadie outperformed everyone in the room. Even the Dark Queen praised her, which wouldn't happen so often. Through their new spy, they learned the locations of the Guardian safehouses and how Noah operated in each kingdom. However, even Noah's elites didn't know where he kept Hammond. He has no idea, my lady.
It seems like Noah doesn't trust his own people enough to disclose the location. We might have a chance if we tracked down the Han Torum dwarves, Sadie suggested. Do you think I don't know that? The vamps are searching for them as we speak. But those bearded dodo ducks are good at hiding. After Noah's little fiasco, they went dark. If they were good at something besides building, it's hiding. The subordinates nodded in agreement. After a few more minutes of roasting all the subordinates, Gaia dismissed them. When they were ordered to leave, they all heaved a sigh of relief. To them, the Dark Queen was more terrifying than the Dark Lord himself when she was angry. They could reason with the Dark Lord, who always remains calm and collected. But in stark contrast, no one could utter a word when the Dark Queen was pissed. At that time, the only way to survive her wrath was to keep their mouths shut and agree to everything she said. My lady! Azazel appeared beside Gaia after the mirrors went dark. What does he want? Asked Gaia without turning around to look Azazel in the eyes. Her full focus was on how to find the man who was responsible for building those weapons. Lord Saber says he has an update on the 4th armor piece. As soon as Gaia heard these words, she immediately turned her head toward Azazel. Finally, some fucking good news. Put him through. Soon, Saber's face appeared in the mirror as though all the mirrors had emerged together to form a gigantic face. Judging by the ocean around Saber, Gaia could tell he was on a ship. She also noticed Shorty running around, so she guessed he was in Big Bertha. My lady, Saber slightly bowed. Tell me what you found about the armor piece? Gaia didn't ask any useless questions like how are you or how is the journey. Instead, she went straight to the point. It's in the southern continent, my lady. To be precise, it's in Myril. The man I interrogated told me his family helped bring in 2 crates of ancient artifacts to the southern continent. Apparently, the one who hired him found these artifacts buried somewhere in the Azer continent, said Saber. What makes you think these artifacts are the Dark Lord's armor? Gay rubbed her chin in doubt. Nothing Saber said had actually pointed her to think these artifacts belonged to the Dark Lord. This man's ancestor who brought these artifacts to the southern continent has left behind a ship manifest. In that list, he has written unknown metal pieces that attract lightning. His exact words were metal parts that attract crimson red lightning bolts. Gaia raised her brows as she realized why Saber had come to the conclusion that he did. However, she still had another question to ask. This man you interrogated, how did you find him? Asked Gaia. There was no chance for Saber to stumble upon a man who knew about the Dark Lord's armor piece. The past Dark Lord went to lengths to hide these pieces and ensured only Michael could find them. Granted, one of the armor pieces was found in ruin by others and almost auctioned out to a war god, but it was just a 1 in a million occurrence. She doubted another one of the pieces might have been found by a human. Because he tried to sell this in the Aqua Palace, Saber slowly raised a broken piece of metal with a skull engraved. That is. Gaia's voice trailed off as her jaw dropped slightly. That skull in the metal piece was, without a doubt, the symbol of the Dark Lord. There was no doubt in her mind. If that wasn't enough, tiny bolts of crimson red lightning danced around the metal piece in Saber's hand. One of my people was lucky to intercept the sale and inform me, said Saber. It seems awfully legit to me. What about you, Azazel? Gaia asked the demon butler. He focused his gaze on the metal piece. We certainly cannot neglect the possibility that this piece belongs to the Dark Lord's armor piece. Gaia nodded. Have you learned where these artifacts are in the southern continent? Saber took a long deep breath before answering Gaia. About that, my lady. I have good and bad news. Start with good news. I've been getting more and more bad news lately, Gaia sighed. She thought it'd be too easy for them to get the armor piece without going through some kind of trial. It was like the Dark Lord anticipated everything and designed the trials for them. They had found 3 armor pieces so far, and each of them came at a price. Well, the good news is I've tracked down who owns these artifacts, the Salinators. One of the powerful families in Kingdom Myril. Then what is the bad news? I assume it has something to do with why you can't go there and retrieve the armor pieces by any means necessary, said Gaia as Saber nodded. The heir of Salinators, Matilia Salinator, is married to General Quintus. As soon as Gaia heard the name Quintus, a light bulb lit inside her head. In all the chaos, she forgot about Quintus and Kingdom Myril's aggressive expansion. Thanks to Kane's surprisingly masterful tactics, they were able to stop Myril from waging wars on other kingdoms. Moreover, Quintus went dark after Michael killed Fabia Viridis.
They hadn't seen Quintus since she turned him into a super soldier using vampire strains. Without General Quintus, the Kingdom Myril completely ceased all its hostile activities. After Giselle and Maven merged together, they became a powerful kingdom itself, while Tiberius found his own kingdom, the Freedom Land, although he hadn't announced his land as a new kingdom yet. That left Pre-Rid and the Trident of the southern continent Kivin, Zoril, and Nedis aka the kingdoms ruled by kings instead of senates. The last time Gaia heard from Caius, Kingdom Myril, and Kingdom Pre-Rid was in peace talks. For some reason, Cain wanted the peace talks between them to drag on instead of coming to a solution. If he had thought, he could have ordered Arya to assassinate the senators of Myril and bring an end to the Cold War, yet he chose not to. I did some digging and found when Quintus married Matilia, the Salinator family gifted Quintus with priceless valuables and artifacts. And you think these artifacts include the Dark Lord's armor piece? Gaia tilted her head. Yes, Saber frowned. Judging by the dark lines on his forehead, Gaia guessed they couldn't simply go to Quintus' home and take the armor piece by force. Tell me what the problem is, asked Gaia. Matilia is a regular customer to a noble bathhouse where one of Sadie's girls is working. To the rest of Myril, Quintus has taken personal time, but according to his wife, he disappeared along with many of the family artifacts. I broke into their home and went through all their wealth but found no armor piece. Which means Quintus has the armor piece, Gaia finished Saber's sentence. Are you sure, Saber? Gaia asked. This is the only lead we have, my lady. I'd say we should chase it down. Gaia took a few long moments to think about this. By destroying the prototype and the weapon right under her nose, Noah caused a huge blow to her mindset. She started to second-guess everything she had planned, which was very unlikely of her. It didn't only affect her but also everyone in the Dark Army. Go ahead, but if you sense something is amiss, get out of there immediately. We cannot deny the possibility this might be an elaborate trap designed by that son of a bitch, Noah. Don't worry about me, my lady. I lived long enough to outsmart a human. Saber snickered as Gaia slowly shook her head. Do not underestimate Noah. I underestimated him, and as a result, I have failed the Dark Lord. Saber was actually surprised to see the graveness in her voice. To be honest, he had never seen her like this. I will take your advice to my heart, my lady. Now with your permission, I'd like to dismiss myself. Talk to Tiberius. He was tracking down Quintus, and he might have an idea about Quintus' location, said Gaia. Chapter 846. Back on the bed with Gaia, the storm was raging around the floating mountain in the dark ocean. As the storm grew more violent and powerful, the wind blew past strong enough to pick up a man and fling him to the briny waves. Several tornadoes formed in the sea and slowly moved toward the mountain. The superiorly thick smoky clouds rolled in like boulders, ready to crush anything in their way above the dark castle. The darkness was engulfing and seemed to consume any speck of light entirely. Any last hope was gone. The merciless winds caused the enormous waves to rise like giant sea monsters. These waves almost touched the very bottom of the floating mountain. Every wave erupted like a raging volcano. The lightning storm joined the party and decorated the sky with streaks of lightning. Except for the vampire guards who were tasked to patrol the floating mountain, everyone else took shelter inside the castle. While the storm was raging outside, Gaia sat beside the window and watched the storm outside. She tightly held a cup of hot coffee Raylene had made her. Without Nightmare and Michael, she felt lonely. For some reason, Nightmare chose to fly through the tornadoes to hone his flying skills. But she knew he just came up with an excuse to spend some time alone. It wouldn't take a genius to tell Nightmare missed Claire and the Sunrise sect. He didn't miss them much when Vidora was there to keep him company. Since Vidora left for the demon's grave with Michael, they both felt lonely. She didn't blink as she stared at the storm through the foggy window. Her fingers moved toward the window without her control, writing the name Michael on the glass. Soon, the words disappeared in the fog as she leaned on the window. Like a bird flying out of its nest, her thoughts flew away from the room. The temperature within the hot coffee dropped by several degrees and started to turn cold coffee. Ever since she lost the prototype and the weapon after so much preparation and planning, she lost her appetite. During the last couple of days, Raylene became another mother to Gaia. She made sure Gaia's been eating and drinking well despite her lack of appetite. When Gaia refused to eat, Rael would just knock on her head like an angry mother and feed her with her hands as she did to Cindy and Rummy. Looking at the dancing tornadoes, Gaia's consciousness drifted away as her eyes slowly closed. When her head fell, She became wary and emptied the warm coffee in a single gulp. Then, she strolled toward the neatly made bed and just collapsed on the bed like a lifeless body. Both her body and mind were exhausted to the point that as soon as she hit the bed, she entered into a dreamless sleep. The rain droplets played drums upon hitting the windows and the roof, playing a lullaby like a loving mother. As she was on the verge of completely losing sentience, she felt a hand around her waist. Gaia thought it was a dream as the embrace felt like it came from Michael. He used to hug her tight while sleeping. Every fiber in her body wanted the warmth to last longer and did not want this dream to end. Then, the hand around her waist tightened its hold, pulling her closer toward a gentle warmth. It felt too real to be a dream. She abruptly opened her eyes as her body was about to jolt out of bed. But her body froze the moment she saw Michael's face. Michael gently brushed the strand of hair falling on her face. On the other hand, Gaia looked as though his shocking return petrified her. She was speechless. "Is this real?" Gaia muttered. "You tell me," Michael said, slowly moving his head closer to hers. She could feel his warm breath breezing past her like a morning breeze. When she opened her mouth, he closed it with his own lips. Their bodies pressed together heatedly against each other, breathing heavily as they tasted each other's lips. Everything around Gaia blurred and silenced. The only sound she heard was the sound of his hands gently cupping her face to position her face for a heavenly kiss. They only departed when they lost their breath. "When did you come back?" asked Gaia. Her alluring eyes sparkled with joy at seeing Michael. It was too much of a shock to her. "Just a few minutes ago. The moment I stepped into this world, I came running to see the most beautiful girl in the entire universe." Michael pinched Gaia's nose playfully. "I see the demon's grave has turned you cheesy," Gaia purred. She threw her arm around Michael's shoulder and tried to pull him closer, although there was no space between them. "Where is Vidora?" Gaia asked. "They went to see Raylene. I think we should talk about why I sense some gloom in your eyes. Something happened?" Despite how happy she looked, Michael could see through her eyes and read her like a book. After entering the portal, he appeared somewhere in the crystal ocean that divides Elon and Azair. From there, he used runic teleportation to reach the castle. So he didn't know what had happened while he was gone. As she heard him, she moved closer and rested her head on his chest. "I fucked up," Gaia said in a husky voice. Then, Gaia began to tell Michael what had happened since he left for the demon's grave. When she finally finished her story, Michael surprised her with a chuckle. "You idiot! That was the reason why you look so gloomy?" Michael rubbed her head as she looked at him with shock and surprise. To be honest, she never expected Michael to take her failure so casually, like it didn't matter. "I failed you," Gaia purred. Once again, Michael ruffled her head. He liked to ruffle her perfectly combed hair and kiss the top of her head. Although he was not the most romantic man in the world, he never passed on an opportunity to pamper her and shower her with kisses. "Nothing you ever do will fail or disappoint me. You silly idiot. What if Noah destroyed the prototype and the weapon? You did everything you could." But, Gaia muttered as Michael shook his head. "No buts. Listen." Michael lifted up Gaia and put her body on him. He then cupped her face and looked her in the eyes. "If I fail to do something, would you be disappointed in me?" Gaia shook her head. "Of course, I will kill you if you don't marry me or look at another girl. But I won't feel disappointed." Gaia punched Michael in the chest. Despite her words, he never doubted Michael, not even for a second. She trusted him enough to leave Michael with thousands of beauties in a room without a worry in the world. The trust they had in each other was stronger than anything in the world. They both knew a relationship couldn't survive without trust. Her words made Michael chuckle. "See, that's how I feel. Whatever you do or don't, you will never disappoint me. Besides, why are you looking at the events as failures? You and I both know it was Noah who destroyed the weapon along with the Hontorum shipyard. We can use it to turn the dwarves against the guardians. They pretended to be elves, so I'd say the elves won't be happy about their names being dragged through the mud. So we can give the elves and the dwarves a common enemy," said Michael. He came up with the plan on the spot, and as simple as it may sound, the plan would bring major heat upon the Guardian Guild once he provided proof about Noah's involvement to both dwarves and the elves. Now that Gaia said they turned a guardian into their spy, it would be relatively easier for him to gather the needed proof to make Noah's life harder. Noah may have gained the upper hand in the new weapon matter, but Michael would soon pay him back several folds. I've returned from the most dangerous places in the world. Can you put aside these matters and give me some love? Michael winked. Only kisses for you, my darling, said Gaia in a playful tone. Until you marry me. Why did I agree to that? I have the most beautiful sexy girl as my fiancée, and I don't get to do more, Michael pretended to be disappointed. As far as Michael was concerned, relationships were more than having physical satisfaction. He didn't think Gaia would say no if he insisted, but Michael respected her wish not to have anything physical more than a kiss. He was quite happy with that because she was the one for him. This was a magical relationship Michael would treasure forever. Every time he looked into her eyes, he promised himself not to let anything happen to her. The Dark Lord was right to reset the entire universe. If something were to happen to Gaia, Michael would go to hell or heaven to bring her back, no matter the cost. Even the Dark Lord has to obey his woman, Michael, Gaia chuckled. Inside these walls I am the boss. Is that so? Michael grabbed her by her slender waist, pushed her to the side, and got on top of her. He held her wrists firmly. Bastard, don't even think about it, Gaia squirmed. I am not thinking about anything, Michael said with a foxy smile. The following hours were spent cuddling and kissing. They talked for hours until they both fell asleep under the cozy blanket. Chapter 847 Celici, the Queen of Nagaland, a few days ago. In a spacious hall with a ceiling 20 feet high, designs of fruit and flowers were carved into the molding, and small fat children with wings looked down at the marble floor from every angle. Vases of blossoms gave off a cloying scent that made my eyes itch. The hall had a square oak table in the center with numerous comfy chairs to sit in. Since there were no windows, sun rays could peek into the room. Instead, a magnificent chandelier hung above the oak table, brightening the hall with its golden light. The dark brown walls made of wood perfectly complemented the marble floor, though one would think the combination wouldn't work. The only way to get in or out of the hall was the steel door with countless runes engraved in it. Seconds became minutes, and minutes turned an hour when the door finally creaked open. Zanali stepped into the hall and strolled toward the table. They'll be here soon, Mother, Zanali pulled out a chair and said, looking at the door. Then, a tall, graceful woman dressed in majestic red robes. Her hourglass figure sat well on her wafer-thin body. She had a complexion of an impeccable golden hue. Her pencil-thin eyebrows eased down gently to her black, beetle's leg eyelashes. A sculptor could not have better fashioned her seraph's ears and pixie's nose. Filed to perfection, her rose-red fingernails ran through her fiery red hair. Spools of it plunged around her photogenic face and hid a swan's neck, elegant and smooth. This woman was born to draw attention toward her, and it was hard not to look and give her full attention. When she opened her mouth to answer Zanali, her beguiling oyster-white teeth lit up the room. She was the ruler of Nagaland and Zanla's mother, Celici Hearthill. Even after marrying the king of Nagaland, she kept her last name without changing it as any woman would have. Once Celici settled down, people began to enter the hall one by one through the door. At first, some elves arrived, then some dwarves, orcs, and humans. At last, a group of orcs with books the size of a newborn baby entered the hall and took their seats before the table. After the Nagas filled the rest of the empty seats, Celici finally rose from her chair to address the 60 or so people in the hall. They all stopped muttering amongst themselves and turned their gazes toward her. Victoria and Evan sat with the humans in the crowd, holding hands under the table. First of all, I thank all of you for answering the summons and coming here, said Celici in her captivating voice that fits for a ruler. We are gathered here to make an important step in history to protect our world from all the evil there is and will be. Celici started her speech in a calm manner. The great 8 clans used to protect the world and us. But the reason you've all here is that you and I both feel the same. They've failed us. They forgot the very reason why they were created in the first place. Corruption has rooted in them to the core. If we want our future generations to thrive and prosper, we as their elders have to come together and do what must be done. Celici paused and looked at her audience. We must be the shield that protects our world from evil and darkness. Celici slightly raised her voice. We must be the light bringers in the shadow. Her words echoed through the hall. We must fight for the future of this world for our children. Everyone had a tiny spark in their eyes after hearing her thundering words. Each of them in the hall was handpicked by Celici herself. The most important thing Celici looked at in them was their patriotism and the thirst to protect the world. If one was to dig more about each individual, they could find that these people either witnessed the Dark Lord's wrath in person or were kicked out of their clan for doing what the others deemed a violation of clan rule. But if they hadn't violated the rule, many would have died or failed to get the justice they deserved. For instance, Evan left the Guardian Guild after witnessing Ghost obliterate the entire Ithalan Island, and the Barnes family. What he witnessed that day and how weak he felt affected him mentally. For almost a year, Evan fought the traumatic experience and took the path to self-destruction. At one point, he wanted to kill himself so he could stop hearing all the cries for help. As a godsend, he had Victoria and Zanali. Evan would have been inside a casket 6 feet deep if it weren't for them. After finally stabilizing his mental health, Evan decided to stop running from his fear and fight it head-on. And his fear was just a man, the Dark Lord. So when Zanali told him about Xianxia's plan to fight the Dark Lord, he agreed without a second question. Just like Evan, every single one in the hall had a story. Some were affected by the Dark Lord's actions in one way or another, while some had a strong moral sense to fight evil and protect the world. Since all the Great 8 clans made sure the biggest evil in the world was the Dark Lord, they naturally felt inclined to fight the Dark Lord. Instead of giving a long speech about who I intend to fight, hopefully with your support, I will show you what he was capable of and what he will do to us if we do not fight. Celici flicked her wrist as a cube materialized on the table's center. A dim light shot out of the cube and formed the image of an island. The images changed from uniquely built buildings to people laughing with their children on the streets. Those who realized where these images were taken clenched their fist and prepared them mentally. Almost everyone knew what was about to happen except for the orcs, who lived most of their lives in seclusion. Then, as they guessed, the beautiful island became a battlefield. The people saw everything they admired burning as dead bodies littered the ground. One by one, the images showed how brutal the last couple of days were for Ithalan. Thousands of mothers lost their sons and daughters. Thousands of children lost their fathers and became orphans, and thousands lost everything they had and had to beg for refuge in the nearby kingdoms, said Celici as the images continued to vex their minds. Only one man was responsible for all of the death and destruction, the Dark Lord. As soon as Xianxia uttered the name, the entire hall went silent. But unlike most of the population, the people in the hall seemed furious rather than afraid of Michael. Some of those who lost their loved ones in Michael's war against Ithalan clenched their fists to the point their nails sank into their skin and started to bleed. As we all know, the great clans did nothing to bring him to justice. They are busy doing their politics and fixing their public image. That's one of the many reasons why I want to form a defense against the Dark Lord in the shadows. Because to fight evil such as him, we need to get our hands dirty, said Celici as Zanali sighed inside. A year ago, if her mother proposed to build another order in secret to fight against the Dark Lord, she would have outright rejected it or tried to talk her mother out of it. But after witnessing all the death and destruction caused by the Dark Lord firsthand, Zanali learned the hard way that her moral views do not apply to him. Evan slowly raised his hand. Evan, right? Celici turned her gaze toward Evan. He nodded and continued with his question. Let me get this straight. Are you telling us that we have to find a new clan or an order outside the Great 8 clans? Asked Evan. Our new order doesn't need to be separate from the Great 8 clans. As you may have noticed, some of you are in one of these clans. You don't have to leave your clan to fight, just like I don't have to leave my throne. What matters is we are in this together, and we must focus on one thing, putting an end to the Dark Lord's reign before it begins. In other words, you want us to be double agents. Victoria's question followed Xianxia's explanation. I don't want you to be anything. You are allowed to leave if you want to. I am prepared to put my life on the line to ensure my children and the future generation get to live in a world without any fear of the Dark Lord and his evil aura. The question is, will you do the same? Celici asked Victoria. I am. It wasn't Victoria who answered the question but Evan. I can't talk for the others, but I had enough of Ghost and his cruel reign of terror. I watched him slaughter thousands of soldiers for what? Revenge? No, Evan shook his head. He wanted to quench his thirst for blood. There was a time I said to myself, he is not that bad, Evan shrugged. Yes, he was not bad. He was evil. I saw the look on his face when he slaughtered Maxim Barnes, his wife, and his daughter. He enjoyed their pain and suffering. To this day, there are people who still suffer because of him. I, for one, will not stand aside and let him continue to terrorize the world I want my children to grow up in. So yes, I will put my life on the line and fight him to death. Evan banged the table as Celici smiled, looking at the people around Evan who agreed with him. Despite their racial differences, everyone in the hall decided to form a vanguard against the Dark Lord. 5,000 years ago, What started as a mere group of 70 members grew into a shadow clan that rivaled the Great Eight clans. Like it or not, history had a tendency to repeat itself. Chapter 848. Not one but two. Andreas. After initiating her own order against the Dark Lord, Celici returned to her room. Her husband, Castian Ashton, was visiting one of their cities to oversee the relief program. The city was affected by famine, and the entire Nagaland depended on the charity of the Empress. Xianxia was a spacious oval room with walls the color of a burning flame. The smell of sweet gardenia candles engulfed the room. On the right side of the room was a royal red sofa set for Celici to sit and relax, looking at the bamboo garden through the window. Although she was supposed to stay and sleep with Castian in the king's room, she chose to be in her own room. This place had become her refuge and safe haven throughout her almost 2 decades of marriage. Her bedroom only held the things that were very precious to her. She let no one inside the room, including her husband and the maids. As a matter of fact, she cleaned her room by herself instead of ordering the maids to. She decorated the walls with several portraits that reminded her of her life as the Queen of Nagaland. Almost no one knew about Xianxia's life before she became the queen. Some believed she was a noble family heir, while others believed she seduced Castian after Queen Adelia's untimely death. But Celici couldn't care less about the speculations or those who opposed her because they were still loyal to Adelia and her murdering maniac of a daughter, Gaia Ashton. Adelia closed the door behind her and walked to the window to see the serenity of the bamboo garden outside. She could connect with her inner thoughts while she was in her room. Her mind established a sense of peace as she stared at the peaceful garden outside. Whenever her life in Nagaland got tougher, which happened so often because of Gaia and Adelia's loyalists, she would come to her room and think things out thoroughly in order to make life easier. The sound of the bamboo fountain cancelled out the sounds of everything around her. As she looked at the bamboo garden, a puff of smoke came from one of the portraits depicting a village. The smoke slowly took the shape of a middle-aged man with milk-white hair. The man hovered in the air behind her, waiting for Celici to turn around. She made him wait for a few minutes and then turned around. "Has everything gone according to our plan?" asked the man. "It went better than we expected. You know how to pick them, Andreas." Celici addressed the man as Andreas, the Supreme Guardian. She was not wrong, as the man before her was indeed Andreas. Just like the soul inside Noah's ring, the man before Celici was another part of Andreas' whole soul. The only difference was the soul part in Xianxia's room was much younger compared to the soul piece inside Noah's ring. "Except my disciples," Andreas sighed. "You didn't choose Noah Winston, Andreas. He was born a god, just like the Dark Lord. You chose Noah because you wanted to train Noah in the fight against the Dark Lord," said Celici. "It seems like my other soul part is doing a bang-up job training Noah. I wouldn't be here if he wasn't," Andreas sighed. Although both Andreas derived from the same soul, they became separate beings. Besides, the Andreas with Noah was in existence longer than this Andreas. As a result, Mentor Andreas lost some memories, including the other soul pieces in existence. Don't underestimate Noah, Andreas. The Dark Lord tried to get him pickle when he said the Supreme Guardian was alive and with Noah. Everyone thought it's going to put a target on his back. But he played the situation well and turned him into a ladder to reach the Supreme Guardian position. And from what I've been hearing, he was handling everything well, Xianxia's praise surprised Andreas. He was with her for 2 decades, and he had never heard Celici praise her own daughter once, let alone someone else. He just needs a little push, and that's why we are here. Aren't we? Celici asked as Andreas nodded. Celici strolled toward the sofa with Andreas hovering beside her like a friend. He was the only one who knew the real Celici, and she was the only person who knew of his existence. They had been collaborating for almost 2 decades. 20 years ago, Celici and Andreas orchestrated Adelia's death to usurp the throne of Nagaland. Adelia's family, the Wraiths, was building a powerful kingdom to support the Dark Lord when he arrived in this world. They almost succeeded in their plan because before Celici took the throne, Nagaland was powerful enough to take on the Elven Empire itself. Gaia blamed Celici for the downfall of Nagaland, and she was right to do so. To be precise, Gaia was half right. Xianxia's rule was indeed the reason for Nagaland's downfall, but what Gaia didn't know was that Celici planned everything. Xianxia's sole reason for being the Queen of Nagaland was to keep Nagaland in check because the last thing the world needed was a superpower to back the Dark Lord in his war against the world. So far, Xianxia's plan was going without a hiccup. Her next move was to build a shadow order to fight the Dark Lord in ways the Guardian Guild would never dare. She built an image of a kind and compassionate queen for this very moment. Everything she sacrificed and went through was finally coming together. I think he needs more than just a little push. I think we need Noah to see that the longer he ignores the Dark Lord, the more people will suffer. Power comes with responsibility. Noah needs to learn that one way or another. Andreas' voice was grave. Fortunately, he lacked a physical body and was restricted from leaving Xianxia's side. Otherwise, Noah would have had two mentors to argue with. Noah thought his current mentor was pushing him hard toward fighting the Dark Lord, but he didn't know how bad it could have been if this Andreas had been inside Noah's ring instead. Destruction is easier than creation. Andreas. You cannot blame the guy too much. He's clearly doing his best. Why are you defending him so much, I wonder? Because you aren't. Like it or not, only Noah could kill the Dark Lord. So we should help Noah instead of criticizing him, Andreas sighed, nodding. You are right. I just hope he stops wasting time and cuts down the Dark Lord's army. We have put our plans in motion, Andreas. We will start dismantling the Dark Lord's empire piece by piece, starting from the kingdoms in the southern continent. An hour ago, the gathering went more successful than Salisi and Zanali expected. It was really surprising for them to see how many people were boiling with rage inside toward the Dark Lord. They all needed an outlet and a leader who directed this anger and utilized them against the Dark Army. When Salisi slowly filled in the void they desperately hoped to be filled, they were all easily swayed to join the order. While Salisi was addressing everyone's concerns, Zanali left the room for a moment and brought back a whiteboard with several portraits stuck to it. Many of those portraits were hand-drawn and resembled Michael. Surprisingly, some of them highlighted the Olympus around Michael's wrist. The people in the hall turned their gazes at the whiteboard and the portraits. They silently expected Salisi to explain what the hell those portraits were except the ones that had Michael's face. While most of their eyes were glued to the whiteboard, Salisi flicked her wrist as a brass spyglass finished with various intricate runes appeared on the table before her. If one looked closely at the spyglass, they could see a tiny H embossed among the runes. The H was really, but it was there, symbolizing the creator of this spyglass. To defeat the Dark Lord, we need to know both his strengths and weaknesses. Until recently, I thought he didn't have a chip in his armor. But this little thing changed my thoughts by exposing a crucial weakness. Salisi paused for a moment, letting everyone boil with curiosity. Everyone leaned forward. Then, Salisi slowly gave them an answer. The Dark Lord is not as strong as we thought while he was in the southern continent. Everyone was visibly shocked to hear Salisi because her words contradicted what they believed. As the world knew, no one could use cultivation power within the void line. Hence, the moment someone entered the southern continent, they would become mortals. Even the immortals were not an exception. That was the reason the southern continent looked like a new world to the cultivators and why they avoided the place. Moreover, that was why Michael chose the southern continent as his home base, because in a world where no one could use energy, one who could would be the god. This spyglass was built to gauge someone's cultivation level when the void effect hit the continent of Elon and Azer. But, it could determine someone's cultivation even when they were inside the void. No one bothered to look for someone's cultivation in the southern continent because there was no point in that until the Dark Lord started to use arch energy within the void line. Salisi placed the spyglass back on the table and continued. Although he uses energy, the moment he stepped into the void line, his cultivation went from immortal to core formation. Salisi slowly turned around and placed her hand on the portrait of Olympus. This thing around his wrist is what gives him the ability to use cultivation within the void line. If we take this out, he'll be as weak as a commoner. How certain are you of this? Asked Victoria. I'd bet my life on it. Each of you will get one when we wrap this up. So if you don't believe me, you are welcome to take this and monitor the Dark Lord from one of our safe houses. Chapter 849 Money Problem. Michael took a long nap on his comfy bed with Gaia under the storm's lullaby. Even after the storm had disappeared, the sky was still dark and gloomy, leaving only clusters of drizzling gray clouds. The Dark Army and everyone in the castle didn't know the Dark Lord had returned from the demon's grave. So it was just another day for them. When Michael finally opened his eyes, he saw Gaia curled up under the warm blanket attached to him like a koala bear. He slowly pulled away her hands and left the bed while trying his best not to wake her up. As usual, Michael entered the bathroom attached to his bedroom and took a long bath. Although he kept his body clean using arch energy, he was accustomed to taking baths. Then, he wore a new set of round-neck full-sleeve shirt, long coat,
trousers, and boots. Of course, everything was in black, as he liked. After a long time, Michael had 2 swords on his back, forming the shape X. Standing before the 6-feet mirror, Michael combed his hair, rolled his sleeves to his elbows, and left the room. "Good morning," Gaia purred as she slowly woke up from her sleep. She rubbed her eyes and stretched her arms above her head. Michael stood there as Gaia came to him, pecked him on the cheek, and went inside the bathroom to take a bath. He waited for her outside. While waiting for her, Michael took out an empty parchment and a quill. His world table was located before the table because of Michael's habit of gazing at the horizon. He placed the parchment on the table and sat on the chair. "What do I need?" Michael rubbed his head through the hair with the quill and listed everything he needed to brew his special brew in his mind. One by one, Michael wrote everything on the parchment. Except for the herbs that were only found in Itanies, Michael needed a cauldron big enough to hold 1,000 liters of liquid. Fortunately, the dwarves had finished building a new alchemy hall for Michael to start his work. The next thing he required was the bottles to hold the brew. Certainly, he couldn't hold the brew in vials. Instead, he needed glass bottles. When it came to glass bottles, the only place to get them from was Dalgarum. Once he got all the required items, he could finish the brew in a day or 2. As he finished writing his list, Gaia exited the bathroom, smelling like a newly blossomed jasmine. Once again, she kissed him on the cheek and unsheathed his swords without noticing the parchment in his hand. The sword almost slipped out of her hand, but she managed to grab it by the hilt with both her hands in time. "Bloody hell! It's heavy," Gaia gasped. She had to use a bit of her strength to lift the sword back into the air and swing. "Careful," Michael warned Gaia. "Now that you can forge weapons, why don't we visit this magic forge of yours and forge something for me?" asked Gaia while swinging around the dark sword. "Do you have something in mind?" Michael asked Gaia. Yesterday when Gaia told him everything that happened, she seemed particularly intrigued by the Death Kiss crossbows, which reminded Michael of handguns. With his inventor and blacksmith traits, he planned to fuse energy and his knowledge of modern weapons to create new kinds of weapons. Equipping Big Bertha with torpedoes was the first step in that plan. "Maybe," Gaia nodded. Michael finished his list and put it inside his coat pocket. Then he stood up from the chair. "Let me guess, you want something like the Death Kiss crossbows?" Looking at the glowing smile on her face, Michael could tell he had guessed it right. She then came to him with a dark sword on her shoulder. "Can you make me one?" "I can make one better," Michael casually shrugged. Given the right materials, Michael would forge better weapons. Unfortunately, most of the weapons in his mind required special runes that could only be bought from the system. So he had to postpone forging new weapons until he could settle the debt. Besides, a portal was required to reach his forge, and he was nowhere close to building one. He wasn't an expert in portals, but he knew it would cost him millions which he didn't have. They were in dire need of gold coins. Hopefully, Michael could get his new revenue stream up and running. Otherwise, they would be in big trouble because although the Dark Army was loyal to him, loyalty wouldn't fill their bellies and keep their needs in check. "But you have to wait for some time. First, we need to fix the financial side of things." Gaia rolled her eyes, giving him an "it's about time" look. "Connect me with the twins. I want them to get me some things," said Michael. He then took the dark sword from her hand and unsheathed it. Following Michael, Gaia contacted Azazel and conveyed Michael's order. The corridors and the walls looked much better than when he left the castle a few weeks ago. He had yet to see the building process and hoped to get more coins before the dwarves stopped the construction works. Not because they needed gold coins as their wage, but because they needed materials, and materials that didn't come for free. Even the Dark Lord had to buy things using gold coins. There were several rooms on the way to the meeting hall, which were blocked by crates and stones. The dwarves were yet to finish building those rooms, according to Gaia's exact prerequisites. She oversaw everything and gave the dwarves the challenge of their life. Although the Dark Army kidnapped these dwarves had grown to love the challenge of building the Dark Castle. It was nothing like they had ever built. Every single dwarf was handpicked by Gaia as she settled down for nothing but the best. On top of the talented dwarves, Eladir worked with a group of runemasters to engrave defensive and offensive runes throughout the castle. The past Dark Lord's castle and the arrays alone killed thousands of guardians and enemies who dared to step onto the Dark Ocean. At its peak, the castle was nothing but a death trap feared by everyone in the world. If the past Dark Lord was alive,
He would be proud of his current self because the castle Michael was building was shaping up to be more powerful than its earlier version. The meeting hall was dimly lit with torches instead of chandeliers. The flickering light illuminated by the torches added an eeriness to the hall. When Michael and Gaia reached the meeting hall, they saw Azazel was waiting for them. "My lord." Azazel bowed deeply. His gaze immediately fell on the dark swords as he could feel the threatening aura radiating from the swords. Azazel then proceeded to pull out Michael's and Gaia's thrones for them to sit on. After they settled into their respective thrones, Azazel waved his hand as the stone table slowly split opened in the middle. A mirror rose from the hole and flickered for a moment before showing the faces of Titus and Optimus. The twins looked different with their cropped haircuts and brightened faces. Keeping them off the battleground was the best decision Gaia made for them. She had her doubts when she made them the procurer of rare goods and everything for the Dark Army for the best price possible. However, the twins surprised Gaia by making contact throughout Elon and Azair and dealing with the merchants themselves. It wouldn't be an understatement to say the Dark Castle solely depended on the twins for the construction materials. "My lord, my lady," the twins bowed as their eyes glistened with gratefulness and respect. "I'd love to have a chit-chat with you guys, but I'm kinda in a rush. So let me cut to the chase. I need everything on this list as soon as possible." Michael took out a parchment and raised it so the twins could take a good look at the things he had written on the yellow parchment. Titus quickly scribbled everything down on a piece of paper. Thanks to their experience, Titus and Optimus were able to give Michael a rough estimate of how much everything on the list would cost him. "My lord, if we are to get everything you want, it's gonna cost at least 50 million. Gaia's brows arched up as she snatched the parchment from Michael's hand and read everything from top to bottom. What in the hell would cost 50 million? She muttered. But when she saw the epic-class cauldron, the largest size, Titus' words made sense to her. Why stop for epic? Just write down you need legendary class, Gaia said sarcastically. Titus and Optimus scratched their heads, looking at the Dark Queen bicker with the Dark Lord himself. She was the only person in the entire army who had the guts to yell at him. Believe it or not, this was one of the many reasons the subordinates trusted the Dark Lord more than the Great Eight clans because an evil person, as they claimed, would never sit there and listen to a woman yell at him. On the contrary, they knew only one with a kind heart and humanity intact would respect and listen to his female counterpart. Whatever. Just get him what he needs. I assume you two need some time to locate everything on the list, Gaia asked as the twins nodded. Give us 5 days, my lord, asked Optimus. We need time to get the coins for the items. Gaia leaned closer to Michael and whispered into his ears. Michael nodded. Getting the coins they needed was Gaia's specialty, and she had done a better job than he ever could have. Hence, Michael trusted Gaia to deal with it as she always did. She already started to rub her chin, formulating a plan inside her head. If the twins were right, they needed 50 million in 5 days. Then I expect you to report to me in 5 days, said Michael. Chapter 850 Opportunity arises. Michael was about to leave the meeting hall after talking to the twins when Azazel received a call from Sadie. My lord, Lady Sadie has learned something important, Azazel said. Put her through then. Michael motioned him to connect Sadie to the mirror before them. Azazel nodded and flicked his wrist as the mirror flickered for a moment before showing Sadie's face. Sadie was pleasantly surprised to see Michael without his mask or the usual black armor. His current attire reminded Sadie of the time she first met him. At that time, she was far stronger than him. Everything felt like a dream to Sadie. In such a short time, the cocky guy she met at the Heavenly Gate competition went from Foundation Stage Warrior to the Dark Lord who was at the Immortal Stage. Looking at Michael's charming face, her cherry-red lips curled upwards, radiating a bright smile. My lord! Sadie grabbed her long sky-blue skirt and curtsied Michael. How are you, Sadie? Michael asked with a gentle smile. I am perfectly fine, my lord. Thank you for asking. Michael nodded. Sorry to break the reunion, but tell us, what have you learned? Gaia interjected. It was not like Gaia was jealous or something, but she didn't like wasting time when they had to earn 50 million in 5 days. Time was of the essence. Princess Chanel Forbes was cursed by an elven mage, my lord. Sadie took a deep breath and said. Her words stunned Michael for a moment. The name Forbes rang a bell inside his head. If he was right, the king of Kethen, Noah's homeland, was called Porter Forbes. Princess of Kethen? Gaia asked as Sadie nodded. When Gaia was the princess of Nagaland, she met Chanel at a gala and exchanged a few words. Of course, Gaia paid little to no attention to Chanel or any other nobles. She hated those galas and always found an excuse to escape midway. Go on, tell us everything you know. Gaia gestured at Sadie to continue. The gears inside her head slowly started to turn, formulating a plan to get the 50 million gold coins and maybe more. This felt like a God-sent opportunity to Gaia. She knew about Michael's curse-breaking skill. Thus, if Chanel was indeed cursed, she had a way to break the curse and save the day for King Porter. King Porter's close friend is a regular customer of one of the dance houses in Rosegate. I have some of my girls working there since it's where the nobles tend to let their tongues loose. A few hours ago, this man had a little too much ale and spurted out that the elves had cursed the princess. Recently, Princess Chanel cancelled all her visits and completely went dark. I heard rumors from the maids that they were ordered not to disturb the princess no matter what. Sade paused for a moment and continued. I had my doubts for a while because I felt something was amiss. Especially after Hendrix Gardner paid the king an unofficial visit. So I ordered my girls to work on the ministers. Hendrix Gardner, Michael muttered to himself. The last time Michael met this 6-star alchemist in the alchemy competition, the vampires almost killed him. He would have died if Michael wasn't there. At that time, Michael only wanted Gabriel to die. Michael wondered what the old man thought when he realized the young man sat beside him and judged the competition was the Dark Lord himself. Apparently, the princess has only 3 more days to live. What about Noah and the Guardians? If the princess only had 3 more days to live, King Porter would have approached Noah and asked for his help, right? After all, Noah is still a citizen of Kethen, said Gaia. Plus, she is a princess. I wouldn't be surprised if she were in love with Noah, Michael chuckled. The last time I heard from our guy in the guild, Noah and his team were planning to venture into the treacherous ocean to find a way to break the curse. Then we have to beat them to the princess and save her instead. Gaia leaned back on her throne. Considering Noah took the weapon and the prototype out of her hands, it was only fair that she returned the favor to him by curing the princess before he could. For a price, Gaia snickered. Unlike Noah, Michael didn't need to go to the treacherous ocean to break the curse. Michael could break the curse in a few minutes if he wished, thanks to his curse-breaker skill. On the other hand, Michael laughed inside, thinking Noah would come out of the treacherous ocean empty-handed because he had taken the curse-breaking artifact long ago. So unless there was another similar artifact in the treacherous ocean that even the system didn't know of, Noah would stumble upon nothing but sticks and stones. Did you learn anything about why the elves cursed the princess? How she ended up getting cursed by the elves? Gaia frowned in doubt. The continent Elon had the lowest number of elves in the entire world. Many people in Elon would die without seeing an elf in their entire lives because the elves tended to live in Ar and avoided Elon because they thought Elon continent was a backwater place and beneath their standards. Besides, the elves wouldn't go around cursing people without a valid reason. If they chose to curse her instead of killing her, Gaia knew there must be a reason behind it. According to the man, it's the usual cliché, my lady. Long story short, Princess Chanel met an elf when she was visiting Kingdom Thera and fell in love. She wanted to marry him against King Porter's wishes. She tried to run away with the elf, except the king caught them both and ordered his men to beat the crap out of the elf. The next day, the elf's uncle personally paid King Porter a visit and gifted Chanel an evil curse as a reminder of the king's mistake of raising his hand against his kind. Michael chuckled as it reminded him of Claire's story. She laughed at Chanel inside for thinking she could be with the elf and live happily ever after. If anything, Chanel was lucky the elves didn't curse all her family. But when Michael thought about it, the elf chose Chanel over her family because he wanted her family to suffer more. Imagine seeing your only daughter dying slowly and painfully while you stand there and do nothing. The elf wanted King Porter to feel helpless and blame himself for the rest of his life. That does sound like what an elf would do, said Michael. It seems all the princesses are rebels. Michael turned his gaze toward Gaia and winked. Instead of giving Michael a snarky comment, Gaia just rolled her eyes. Then, Gaia turned her gaze back to Sadie. This is indeed good news. You've been doing a marvelous job so far, Sadie. Gaia couldn't help praising Sadie. Everyone, including Michael, knew how hard it was to impress the Princess of Nagaland, but Sadie managed to do just that. In a short amount of time, Sadie turned a guardian into their spy, inserted her girls in almost every part of the world, created a web of spy networks, assisted other subordinates with their tasks, and slowly solidated her place as the next sect leader of the Silvermoon. It was no simple task, especially when she had to work under Noah's growing influence. It's my pleasure to serve you, my lady, Sadie bowed her head and opened her mouth for a moment before closing it. She looked as though she wanted to say something but didn't know how to. Both Michael and Gaia noticed Sadie's change in behavior. Is there something else you want to share, Sadie? Michael asked her. Sadie looked at Michael and Sadie for a few moments before taking a deep breath. Yesterday, I had a meeting with a guardian. She attended the tea party arranged by Alvaro's aunt, one of the elders in Silvermoon. The question she asked me and the way she looked at me just left me with a bad feeling, said Sadie with a worried tone. Alvaro is our inside man, right? Michael asked Sadie to see her nodding. Lord Saber warned us about her visit. So I was prepared. Still. Sadie's words trailed off. Should I put a hit on her through Arya? Gaia asked, but Michael shook his head before Sadie could give her answer to Gaia. For now, act like nothing happened, Michael said to Sadie, turning his head to look at Azazel. Tell Trista to send one of her minions to shadow the guardian who met Sadie. My lord, Sadie interrupted Michael as he turned his gaze back to Sadie. She is going to the treacherous ocean with Noah, Sadie muttered. Michael rubbed his stubble beard for a moment until he found a way to deal with this annoyance. It was obvious to Michael that this girl was trying to impress Noah, but Michael didn't know how much the girl knew about Sadie and why she took an interest in her. Since Sadie was far too valuable to risk, Michael had to find a way to keep Sadie out of the Guardian Guild's crosshair. As long as Noah was with her, Michael knew he wouldn't be able to take her out. Besides, if he did, Noah would automatically realize Sadie had something to do with the Dark Lord. Therefore, Michael's only viable option was to follow this girl until he knew more about everything. Then when she comes out, tell Trista to shadow the girl. I want to know everything about her. If push comes to shove, I will deal with her personally. Michael's voice turned grave. After becoming the Dark Lord, Michael was rarely involved in problems like this. Instead, he had subordinates to solve them for him. But this felt like something he had to deal with it personally. After hearing Michael's words, Sadie heaved a sigh of relief. With the Dark Lord's reassurance, Sadie could rest easy. The last thing Sadie wanted was a guardian to snoop around. After all, she was just a few months away from getting crowned as the next sect leader. You're tuning in to the Wisdom Diary YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.